Welcome everyone to the October 16th, November 16th. I lost a month there. Wish I could get that back. Meeting of the Barrington Planning Board. Tonight in attendance, we have members Andrew Melnikas, Ron Allard, Jeff Brand, myself, James Jennison, Andy Knapp, Buddy Hackett, also Code Enforcement Officer John Huckins, and Land Use Administrative Assistant Barbara Irvine. And with us remotely is Steve Diamond. We have a quorum, and first on the agenda is approval of the November 2nd meeting minutes. I watched the video, so any questions, concerns?
I had one minor question, concern on line 824. Says didn't have sidewalls. I think I said sidewalk. 824.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't be sidewalls.
I think I said sidewalks. I'm pretty sure.
But they're fabulous tires.
Got new tires for PJ's, good price.
Steve, anything from you?
Nope, fine.
Anyone else?
I make a motion to approve the minutes with the change of sidewalls to sidewalks on line 824.
Second.
Second by
Ron Allen.
Ron. Motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard. Andy M.
Andy, am I?
Buddy Hackett.
Hackett, aye.
James Jennison, I. Ron Allard.
Allard, aye.
Steve Diamond.
Diamond Eye?
Jeff Brand.
Brand, aye.
All in favor, minutes approved with that one correction. Next, zoning order amendments and scheduling for a public hearing. Jeff, you want to open up with, if you have.
Sure. So probably everybody remembers that Carol Ogilvy, she drafted it up and Barbara disseminated the draft zoning amendments. When I received them, I took a look at them and I did a few edits, which you will see in red. And I added.
Can I take one of those?
Oh, sure.
Is
Is John.
You have one?
I read them.
Marked up red one?
Oh, yeah, I got one.
Here, we got plenty.
Oh,
So what you see are the red line edits. There was one we had talked about that I added in with respect to home business. And so I modified, and that's a modification of 747. So I guess, I think that we could take a look at these and we can walk our way down through them one at a time. And I guess we could have a vote on them as we go through them.
Yeah, we can do them as a bunch if we run into a roadblock, or we can do them one at a
Well,
time.
probably better to do one at a time because we're gonna have a vote on these eventually anyway, after we have a public hearing. Then we'll come back to these and then we'll decide if, you know, we'll vote on them. So, well, I guess at this point, we wouldn't have to vote on them because,
You just all agree to bring it forward for the
Right, just-
hearing, correct?
right?
All right.
But it'd be nice if all the changes you want are done. That way, if there's anything that might need attorney to look at, we'd have a chance to get it done.
All right. So Carol was nice enough to write these up as they would be in the warrant articles. So the first one has to do with the changing the zoning ordinance to change the zoning map for tax map 220 lots 57, 57-1, 57-17 from regional commercial to general residential. And to refresh people's memories, that has to do with the developments on Toland Road. That was within the regional commercial zone, as will be the residences that are up behind commercial lots in the town hall on the one that Joe Falzone is proceeding on. So the thought was, even those are in commercial zone, if there are any open lots, do we think that they ought to be developing commercial businesses in the middle of a residential neighborhood? And the thought was no. And so that we could change the tax map to take those residential lots out of the regional regional commercial zone.
Isn't there still gonna be, I mean, there's commercial along 125 in the front of that.
Right.
But then there's that carve out there, and there's just one little piece that goes in there, so it's kind of set back, right?
Yeah, these, the lot numbers that are listed are just the residential lots that were part of that conservation subdivision. The commercial lots aren't part of the lots that are listed for the
Right.
change.
Oh, these are in the.
These are the ones that.
These are in the,
Residential lots in the conservation subdivision
Right.
on Joe Lane Road.
Gotcha.
yeah.
I just have a question. When, in cleaning up the map, I understand on 223 lot 26, converting it to general residential. But the balance of that is left showing is regional commercial.
There's supposed to be 500 feet along 125. The map is drawn incorrectly. When you look at the new proposed map,
Okay.
it's supposed to be the first 500 feet stays commercial. Those are the commercial lots that Joe broke off in the front.
Right.
The rest of it towards the back. No, he said 223, 26. Andy talked about a different lot than what Jeff was talking about.
Right. In the proposed zoning, it shows 223-26 is all general residential, in the back half, which is
Yeah.
what would be the conservation part, it shows
Right, well,
as
that's-
general regional commercial. Which,
Right, and you look at amendment number 2 is for lot 26, regional to general after the first 500 feet. So, yeah.
So the language is right, the map is wrong.
Yeah,
So
So
the
you-
map is drawn incorrectly is what it is. It should be a 500 foot strip along
right,
125.
what you've got drawn there.
Right, but what he's
That-
saying
that
is,
is right.
is the, I think what Andy's saying is this portion back here that's not included in the new blue zone is still regional commercial, even though it's technically a conservation subdivision at this point.
It is,
Now, in our current map, it's all regional commercial there.
right,
So the new map is gonna make it so 500 feet is regional commercial. The balance of it would be general residential. That's what is written, just the map is drawn incorrect.
Okay, so that blue line that's on
Right,
this map would extend to the back of that yellow area.
well, there'll be a 500-foot,
I got that part.
Yeah.
It'd be like an orange strip, 500 foot wide, 125 is what
Yep.
it should be.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And it's not
But
showing.
he's saying the back of that lot, because it's part of the conservation subdivision.
I think what Andy is saying is,
Right
Yeah,
there.
so really,
Yes.
this ought to be
yeah, it should be white.
all of this.
And
still
that's
regional commercial.
Correct. But that's not.
All of this ought to be.
But if we're gonna convert that front blue part, why would that make sense to leave that regional commercial back there?
Because there's still potential for,
See,
commercial development coming off 125 on
Right.
substitute road, you want to limit it so that commercial couldn't go in there. That's what someone wants to do.
Okay.
The other one's already been approved for residential subdivision, and you didn't want someone to try to use the regional commercial rules in a residential neighborhood to create a business that your hands would be tied that you would have to approve.
All right, so the way it's the words that are written were confusing as far as appropriate for the area, because you could be on the edge of that blue outlined residential zone, and then you could have a commercial use right next door to you.
It'd be no different than when you got a general residential and a regional commercial meeting now. And then there's a whole thing where you gotta have the buffer between the residential use and the residential zone. Even in the commercial zone, that's listed already in the zone.
I'm sorry, Jeremy, why is the language confusing? I think the language is clear.
Language is clear, the map's drawn incorrectly.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Jamie, you said the language though. You said the language is wrong?
No, I said the language is for amendment number 2, I think it's misrepresentative, which it says, the purpose of this amendment is to zone the remainder of the parcel for the use that are consistent with the current approval, which is residential. It makes sense if you understand, but then it would be misleading to a homeowner who thinks that all of it behind them is going to now be residential, and you wouldn't be exposed to commercial uses, but you still.
Right, so.
Well, wait a minute. I disagree with that. It says to zone these lots, 57, 1 through 17. And it says to zone these lots to be consistent with their current use.
And I don't disagree. I'm coming from a layman homeowner who says, why are you cutting all the trees on your property next to mine? I really like your trees. This is going to be the same type of thing. I thought this was residential use and it's still commercial back there.
Which is what I'm trying to point out here is if we're saying we have a commercial use the first 500 feet in, you theoretically, you would see an orange line that kind of parallels 125. But then and the rest of the lot becomes general residential, but you have this other lot around it that currently shows as regional commercial that would not be regional
Yeah, but
commercial.
wait a minute,
based on what
It
we were
stays
talking
that way.
Well, wait a minute. But out
But you're outside
behind
of the
those lots,
500.
yeah, wait a minute, over to Substitute Road, Orchard Hill, on the other side of Orchard Hill Road up there, isn't that still part of the conservation subdivision?
Part of it's not. Part of it, the stuff that's drawn in with the red and the white is part of that conservation subdivision. That little orange section that is still on Orchard Hill, that's land, most of it's owned by Jim Connick back there.
I thought that part of that conservation subdivision ran across Orchard Hill Road.
Oh, there was a little block,
There was a
a
block.
little block. Yeah, so there should have been a little block right there. You're right, farther back.
Yeah.
I should have brought the big tax map with me that shows wow.
Do you have one of the other ones?
You can pull it up from the GIS. From the town GIS and put it on display on the screen.
Gonna make another electronic step?
I thought it was.
I trust Barbara. She's got this.
More than just a little square. There was quite a bit of Orchard Hill Road across from that subdivision that was.
Don't be scared.
Yeah, you're correct. It should have been.
Yeah,
It's just a lot number didn't get listed. It's the open space that's part of that conservation subdivision.
Right, so that open space should be included in the tax map change.
Yeah, so we can address that. We'll look at that and get that put in there and then we'll probably have to add the lot number too, because it's got a different lot number.
It does, okay.
yep. All right, I'm in favor. I don't want to make it too complicated. I just wanted to be clear that
That's
there's,
the reason why we're holding this meeting, so we can get things like this straightened out, so we
Right.
hold the public hearing and we're ready for it.
So we want
because I
to,
just want to make it clear that there is still opportunity for commercial
So you
development.
should be able to present. So it should say present your screen in the upper right-hand corner or upper right-hand side usually.
see, I,
I don't want to mess, this is what you want to see before any markings was on it, right?
and from looking at the map, John, it doesn't
I
look
mean-
like you've included all of the conservation area even inside Orchard Hill Road.
Inside.
So we,
What we did was we took the lot, the basic lot, so I'd have to look, when the map got drawn up, Carol got these done for us,
Yeah.
So I want to go back and look on our
Right.
tax maps to see if maybe there should have been another lot number added that was part of that
so
subdivision.
we ought to include all of the house lots behind the commercial lots and all of the conservation area.
For that one, in the one on Toll Lane Road both, right? The conservation area on that one there too?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
all of the conservation areas associated.
House lots in open space area.
In open space.
There it is.
And then you should be able to zoom in onto the map.
That was a good catch, Jeff.
The,
I'm impressed with your memory.
John, the red the red outline
It's for the amendment.
is currently,
Those residential lots along Toll End Road.
okay, so that's not Fell Zone, that's the other one.
Well,
Okay,
they're both fell zones. He did them both.
okay, but
Hey,
not,
man.
not undeveloped new, it's the,
You want to go to
I see the map.
the plus one instead of the minus?
all right.
So,
So-
and then the way that's drawn, it shows like a white in the middle, but a lot of that would be part of what's gonna come out.
So when you zoom in on that portion of it,
So where are we at? Right over
We're-
here, right? Are we right there?
Where the yellow is.
Whoops, I gotta go with
orange.
No, yellow, it's yellow there. See, she wants to go where the yellow is.
It's yellow here.
It's yellow there too.
Should be orange.
No, it's, well,
the.
Right below the the
Part we're talking about.
5
it's yellow, and you'll see.
sign.
That's the part we're talking about, right? Nope, you're right. It's below the, it's
Talking about
below
the
the yellow. Yeah, it's below the yellow,
Substitute.
below the yellow. You're right.
No, down.
So,
Whoops, I went too far. Sorry.
it's okay.
Stop.
Nope, just gotta keep going.
Gotta go up
There you go.
further.
Keep going. You gotta go right to the.
Now enlarge it,
Yeah.
it should drop it.
Can you see it now?
Yeah,
Yep, we can see it on the screen.
Zoomer.
Can you zoom into that area a little bit more?
And that's what-
Can you hear me now?
perfect.
You could
Go right.
lean it a little bit more toward the center, that
Yeah.
would,
Whoops, wrong,
Is that a
Other way.
touchscreen?
The other center.
my wrong center.
your other center.
To the town center.
Whoops. What?
Yeah,
It-
there it
See
is.
it now?
Yeah. Okay, so if you look at that parcel,
So this whole big parcel.
right,
So this is the one Jeff was talking about here. This was part of that subdivision, it's part of the open space.
Right.
right.
That's gonna be a different lot number that we should have included that we missed.
All right.
So what it's
And
leaving,
there's also conservation space with the one on Toland Road.
Too.
That's the red outline one.
Big Conservation space right in the
Yeah.
front. There was a couple commercial lots here, and then there was all residences along here.
Okay,
So these residential lots in the open space, we're gonna put all as general residential. We're gonna add this in this, other than the 500 feet to be general residential.
but this remains regional
But
commercial.
there's still the possibility of coming in a substitute road and doing a commercial development there. If we're gonna take that out and change it, I should probably contact Jim Connick where he owns it to make sure he understands what's going on where it's his land before it goes out to everybody. Just like when I went and talked to Steve Lindsay about his gravel pit.
Right, my only concern on that is when you look at our language here, is it specifically speaks to, tax map 223 lots 20, change, the zoning map by changing tax map
okay,
223
you're on
lot
amendment
26.
amendment 2 now. You
Yeah.
jumped to 2 from 1. Okay.
What I'm just pointing out is that it goes from regional commercial to general residential after the first 500 feet of
Right.
125 for that one lot, which then creates an inconsistency with the lot next to it. If we're saying that we want a 500-foot buffer that's regional commercial, and then we want nothing more than residential.
Technically,
to have
the
it.
reason why it was brought up was not to create the buffer from the commercial. It's because of the conservation subdivision, all those residential lots in there. If someone comes in and says, I want to use a commercial use on my residential lot, the planning board's hands will be tied because it's in that zone.
Right,
You want to take those residential lots out of that zone. Now, the big open lot that's still undeveloped, if someone wants to come in and develop it commercially or do residential stuff, those options are still available once you go past the 500 feet to do the residential. But it's not mandatory they do the residential once they go beyond the 500 feet.
right. My only concern is if we're being mindful of the residents, you folks probably remember it more than me, but, when TurboCam built where they were on Route 9.
Yeah.
Some of you may remember the ruckus it
The
created.
house in the front, the other
Neighbors.
side, correct.
If that suddenly was commercial in through there, I would probably be and I spent $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for a house back in that subdivision and had the risk of a commercial building being stuffed in behind me where I have all woods. I probably might be, pardon the expression, but a little butthurt about that.
But there's, in the zoning, there's
I'll
a
put
buffer
that
that
in
has to
there.
go in between the two. What I'll do is I'll contact Jim Connick. We'll look at that. If he's interested in, I don't want to take his existing rights away from him
Yep.
without talking to him, just like I went and talked to Steve Lindsay about the gravel pit. I think it's only proper we reach out to this person before
Of
we
course.
change their lot.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I'll contact Jim Connick this week and have a discussion with him.
It
But in
just,
the interim, to preserve the residential character of the existing lot, so someone doesn't come in and say, and use a backdoor approach to get a commercial lot in there.
Well, we didn't want it to take one of those 1 acre subdivided residential lots and some guy saying, okay, I'm gonna put a store in here, a convenience store in the middle of this residential neighborhood.
right.
That's what we're trying to eliminate.
Which some people might love, like Ron. Ron would probably love that. Nice drugstore in the middle of his neighborhood.
They could put one right on the side of Swains Lake is where I told them,
Commercial's good, man.
Yeah.
right next to the boat launch.
That's right.
You can use that microwave.
Wait, is it the boat launch? No. I'm not against, I'm not.
But not on my lake, in my town. All right. Steve, you got anything to add?
All good.
All right, so so that first one, amendment number one, two lots, 220, 57, 57, 1, 57, 17. Are we in
Yeah.
agreeance to move that one forward as it is?
With the addition of the conservation area.
Lot
Yeah.
20, which is.
We're gonna add the
addition of
conservation
lot.
area that was part of that subdivision that was on Toll End Road. To get it as part of the residential. It can't be developed anyway, so it's kind of 6 of one, half of the
Well,
other.
I,
It's more appropriate looking to have that as the buffer.
right, so we ought to do that in,
So what do we-
Text,
right.
Conservation area that was,
Just add the whole entirety of the parcel.
technically, is that is that map 24? 233 lot, because there's 233 lot 26, and then the other side of Orchard Hill is,
But wait a minute, what,
so
are
we
you
got two
on
different
two,
things. The one up closer to Toll End Road, the one with the red,
you on amendment?
first one is tax map 220.
You keep
and it's
jumping to
lots-
two, we're trying to clear one.
yes, dear.
I thought we were.
All right,
One's talking about one and one's talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're all
sorry.
good on number one,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
we're all good on
Sorry.
number one, okay, now on to number two.
I just gotta add the open space to it, that's all. We'll get that straight.
So,
But you have it right here.
so the same thing happens with amendment two,
Oh, okay.
that we need to add the conservation space, including that lot on the opposite side of Orchard Hill Road,
That's lot 24.
lot 24. Okay,
And then I'll also talk to Jim about maybe including all the stuff all the way up that he owns too, which might make it more along the lines of what Andy's saying, make that whole little block area.
well,
residential.
yeah, you could draw,
We'll keep the 500 foot along 125.
just so that I am understanding what we're talking about
Well,
with
no,
respect to
changing
that.
the zoning, so.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Oh, still there.
It's,
So what we're talking about is, here's the commercial lots here.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got the housing out here. We want to change these housing lots over. And here's the conservation space right here that's associated. It runs here, down along here. Are you, when you talking to somebody, are you talking about, we'll also take the back end of this? We could go back 500 feet,
Yeah, so.
Right.
and in the back end of this will become residential also?
Yes, so.
Kind of
this-
line up with the edge of the
Yeah,
development
so,
here.
so this was part of that open space and this was
Yeah.
part of something. This land right here is owned by someone else.
Right,
So that's the guy I'm gonna talk to. So maybe what we can do is keep the 500 and make all of this residential is what you
Right.
understand. But I
Right.
wanna talk to the landowners so they're not
Right.
surprised when something goes to vote.
so
Yeah,
at
without doubt.
minimum, we want to take and add in this part of the conservation area and this area out here beyond the commercial
Right.
lots.
But I
Make
just,
those,
because,
I
got
understand what
this
you're doing. I
area
just
here.
wanna reach out to people before we.
right,
yeah,
Yeah, and for the record, I'm good with, whatever he wants, I'm good with that.
Cause I mean,
Whatever he wants.
because there is a thing in our zoning that if a commercial thing on a commercial zone abuts a residential zone, there's a required buffer anyways that's in the regulations.
Yeah.
right.
So, but I'll contact him and see where he goes with it and what he likes. He might like the idea of having residential. I don't know.
I like residential better, but if he views it as a town taking, it's gonna be all kinds of problems for
yeah.
us.
But we could maintain the 500 feet along 125.
I think we should be maintaining the.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So it'd only be from the 500 foot point back.
Well, yeah, but he doesn't have anything on 120
Yeah, most of he's got a little bit.
interior. There's nothing left
There's
on
a little bit
125,
on
is there?
this corner that I think he owns that's within the 500 feet, but very little. Most of it's already got those commercial lots that were part of the subdivision.
Okay.
And one of them, the town actually owns now because of the access was gonna cost them so much to upgrade substitute road that the town took a donation of that lot.
Is that lot 57?
It's the one right on the corner,
Little corner.
Oh, 29, yeah.
because remember the
Yep.
town took that one?
Yep. Yeah, he just gave,
We've tried to offer it to a couple different people and they look at it and then walk away.
yep,
Is the cost of upgrading the road?
yep.
All right.
Because they have to take
All
access
right,
off.
so you're gonna check on that, but as a minimum, we're gonna change over the house lots that are gonna be part of Falcone's development plus the conservation.
And what we had to do is kind of keep our eyes open a little bit. It looks like Joe's finally got his final.
Yeah.
And if the last of that comes through and we get new lot numbers, then we can just take all the residential lots and change them to those lot numbers coming out,
Right,
which would change what we put into voting, but it would be the same intent.
right.
But
It,
it hasn't been approved,
same-
and you get the different lot
it
numbers.
could be the same as the first amendment, which is we listed 57 and 57, 1 through 17, so.
Right, but right now they're not separate lots, but
Right.
they could be.
Right,
So, all in favor of moving number 2
We're
forward?
talking on number 2 now.
yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
As a reference.
Okay, and you guys are okay with the edit, which just
Adding the
clarifies?
Yeah, adding the conservation portion, yep.
Well, and the fact that I added, which is residential development,
Mention that,
just to make it clear to the voters why we're
So
doing
that there's
this.
a,
It is current approved use, which is
It's a
resident.
commercial lot that the town took because it was gonna cost a lot to upgrade green.
So the conservation area is.
I didn't know if it was by
24, I believe.
ordinance or because it was.
There's 26 and 24.
Yeah.
They can develop.
But we don't reference lot 24.
I know, I already added that add the conservation area, which is lot 20.
So because.
There's other conservation area back of,
In a road. that
Yep.
people
which we also
Back here,
Give them
capture,
26.
right?
Right,
The
right.
back of
Commercial
it.
venture,
Right.
So we'd want to capture
Gotcha.
all of the
Right, because of
conservation
cost
area,
of-
including lot
but as land costs keep.
24.
They might.
All right, okay, on to number 3.
So,
All right, this goes down to where Lindsay's Pit is. Lots of discussions about Branford Road where we're talking about 2A tactical. The pit is down there, takes access.
Mumford Road.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Mumford.
Bumford Road. And that right now is, he was grandfathered for the pit when that area was designated as general residential. It says from general residential.
Town and Steve Lindsay always thought it was out of the regional commercial. And when I saw the 2A tactical thing come in, I realized it wasn't, so I had a conversation with him. And he would like it to be regional commercial because that's what he always thought it would be. And from a town's point of view, that's a gravel pit developed into a commercial venture would broaden the tax base a lot more than another residential subdivision.
Right, and so we had a discussion that, you know, the pit area, those lots are developed on commercial use already. You've got Bumford Road that comes in there. Trying to redevelop that if the pit closes into residential use could be difficult. It may be better suited to multi-use, commercial use, and given its current commercial use, and the fact that we're taking some of the commercial use by the first 2 amendments out of the mix for commercial development in that area of 125 across the road, Commercial Way. You've got
Commerce Way.
Commerce Way. You've got pizza place, the bakery. You know, we have been building up, and it's right on 125.
2A tactical will be going in.
2A tactical.
It
Does
makes
anybody
sense.
need to be sold on it?
No.
Any more than it is? I think it's commercial in my mind.
Everybody always thought it
Yeah.
was.
Motion to approve as amended.
Move that one forward, number 3, move.
Yep.
Yes.
Everybody agrees?
Yes.
Steve, you on board with that?
yep.
Diamond nay.
Not in favor, can I ask why?
Yes, we talked about this before. While it has grandfathered commercial use, I think it ending up as, for instance, maybe a solar farm, which would be allowable with possibly allowable with the changes we made to the solar ordinance. Or it could become residential, but my concern is, so it's sort of commercial use now, but a much more intensified commercial use if there's not a practical way of having a secondary access road. And as I had sent to the select board, some of the text I got from the fire chief on the state fire codes, they state that essentially if there are concerns around access, for instance, if there might be too much traffic sometimes, then there needs to be a secondary access. And there's not a way of doing that in this area without going across quite a bit of wetlands, which would be probably prohibitively expensive. So I don't think it's an appropriate location for commercial zoning.
Don't you think it'd be more a larger hazard if there was 100 houses down there and there wasn't the access you speak of?
That's a different problem, and yes, that would also be an issue. But I'm tackling one issue at a time. I think zoning it commercial is not the right thing to do.
You do realize that by zoning it commercial, it creates the ability to put a solar farm in there if somebody sees that as an appropriate use. And with the amount of wetlands toward the back end, it may be a appropriate and viable option for that without creating harm or disturbing the land toward the back of that lot.
But if it's
Yes,
residential, no houses are gonna go in.
In all rights, even if you change it to regional commercial, once you get more than 500 feet off of 125, they can use residential use back there anyways. So what this does is it gives the opportunity for the town to possibly broaden its tax base, where you're taking the opportunity away if you don't change it. That's what it comes down to. You still could end up with all residential out there. There is that possibility.
You got cut off, Steve? Sorry.
Oh, I appreciate Andy's point that making it commercial might make it more possible to do various solar things. Given the changes we made to the solar ordinance, I think there's ways that could be done without it being commercial.
I'm just,
Okay, well,
Up to a
I would
certain
just point
size.
out, I mean, Steve can disagree.
sure,
Yeah.
we don't, I just wanted to hear his reasons.
Yep.
We don't have to be unanimous.
But if a majority of the board wants to go forward.
Yeah,
we
we'll
can do
move
that.
it forward, for sure. I'm not completely familiar with the piece, but you can't connect it to whatever the other side is at Malago that crosses over.
It
No.
already does connect to Province Road. There's just a wet piece through the front end of it.
It's a class 6 road, so technically it's a town road that could be developed.
Yeah, you just have to upgrade the road.
So there is,
There is a connection going over to Province Road. There is. It's
I mean,
not built to a fire lane standard, but there is a connection.
Right.
there's
And
a
it's
connection on paper, but it's not anywhere. I mean, it's nothing actually there. If you look at the satellite imagery, which I did, there's really not a road there, as far as I could tell.
right, but if your concern was raised and there was a commercial endeavor that was slated to go in there, we could say, you gotta build that road and put a connection out back and, we'll give you the wetland permit or whatever to do it, but, so that, all right.
There
I see.
actually is, Steve, there actually is a road there. If you go down Province Road, you will see the cross sign for Bumford Road heading back in there, and you can walk it all the way back through. I'll call it
It's a goat path, but it's still a road.
right, I'll call it a logging road at best, but there is actually a sign on Province Road for it, and you can follow it all the way back in to where it turns back to a gravel road.
And to me, Steve, the dual access exists whether it's commercial or residential. I don't see that being a driving factor one way or the other.
All right.
I guess the other angle of my concern was focusing on development of commercial nature in the town center, this is straying a little bit farther from town center than I think is appropriate.
Right along 125, we want commercial development. I mean,
Yeah, the regional commercial goes along 125
Yeah.
and 4. This is right dead center in the middle of it.
man, this is where we want it. If we want it anyway, this is where we want it.
All right. Keep that in mind. Moving on to number 4, section 2.1.1 as follows. Should
Right.
any of the 3 amendments proposed above pass change the date of the zoning map from March 8th, 05 to March 8th, 2022?
And modify the last sentence to read, reproduction of this map is contained in the appendix of this ordinance and available on the town website. So here's what we discovered when we were discussing this the last time, was that in the back of the zoning ordinance is supposed to be a map of the
Zoning map?
The zoning map.
Yeah.
However, so many revisions ago, it just got omitted and it didn't get updated. So the discussion was, do we want to do that? We said, well, it's awful small, 8.5 by 11. Is it useful? Some people still thought it was useful, but then we had a discussion and said, yeah, but where else can you see it? Well, it already addresses the fact elsewhere in the paragraph that it's available at the town hall, but we said, but we also ought to tell people that there's a link. You can go to the town website and you can view the map, just like we just did. So that was to modify the last sentence to note that it is not only contained in the ordinance, but it's also available at the town website. So people have 3 different ways they can access the map.
Or even more, actually. The GIS system has a zoning layer, and you can see the lot numbers at the same time. So that is probably the best way of seeing both those things.
Okay.
Do we want to say the town website, or do we want to actually have what the web address is?
Well, the problem is kind of going to be that we're going to print these things out and you're not going to be able to link it. Now, if you called it up online, could you link it? You could, but links change. Links
I'm not
break.
saying link, just if you said what the website is, doesn't have to be a hyperlink. Because I think if,
Well, it's Barrington.
Barrington.nh.gov. And then in the search field, you could actually search, or even if you just do a Google search for Barrington GIS or Barrington zoning map, it all comes up. Like
Separate on there.
I'm sitting here right now using the GIS map as I'm referencing this piece. And as you can see, I have the zoning layer turned on the map.
I'm just thinking if I'm reading through this and I say, oh, the town's, now I gotta go find what the town's website is,
Well,
I'm just trying
For
to
the
be, I'm trying
80-year-old
to,
citizen who doesn't.
I'm trying to be
90% of
kind.
People come in and talk to us anyways when they got an issue about something.
well, I know how I have it as I saved the link on my computer, but the way I found it was I just queried town of Barrington and it said, here's the website.
Right. Then you can go to and you can get your zoning map.
I just worry about putting things in documents that have specific internet addresses or names because things change.
Yeah.
The town
actually
website
agree
changed
with
a
that.
couple of years ago.
Well, that's because we tried to
You changed
get into the 21st century and
Right.
upgrade so that we were actually using our .gov information as opposed to everybody,
Having all Gmails.
using Gmail and Yahoo and AOL and
Yeah.
like
All right. So number 4.
Hillary.
So that's why I'm just a little concerned about
All right.
that.
Fair enough, yeah.
Anybody have any issues with number 4?
So bring it forward the way it's redlined. For the,
Yep.
Fine with that.
Steve, you good with that one?
All set?
Number 5, Barrington zoning ordinance as proposed by planning board to amend table 2 by adding new footnote to regional commercial as follows. On town roads, the minimum front setback is 40 feet. The purpose of this amendment is to formalize what has been standing practice.
Yeah, and
as the zone calls for 75.
calls for
Right.
75 in regional commercial. That was intended to be on 125 in Route 4, state roads.
Well, where we ran into the hiccup on this was on Pierce Road, if I remember.
They got a variance, they've already gone to the ZBA, but if the subdivision, behind Liberty Truck, if that ever gets developed.
Yep.
Leave it as a 75 feet and they have to put a 50-foot wide road in, all of a sudden you're gonna have 200 feet between buildings at your closest point, if they push them right up to the edge. And is that realistic when you're trying to do a commercial development? So that's one of the reasons why you'd want to shorten that setback up to keep it all so it's, the land's reasonably used.
Makes sense.
When we
to
say
me.
town roads, does that mean class 5? Does that mean private?
Correct. Any road, any town road.
Does that mean state maintained roads?
No.
No.
Town.
State roads, and that's.
No, that's what the footnote is, because right now it says 75 feet, regional commercial. And the intent was, it was state maintained road.
The intent originally was to have the 75 foot, because if 125 off Wood 4 got widened because of traffic, they wanted the building set back enough so that it wouldn't interfere with the town roads being widened. The town roads being widening along that regional commercial is probably never gonna happen. I mean, you take Pierce Road, it's really a glorified driveway.
Right.
It's, so to have them stay 75 feet off of Pierce Road kind of serves no real purpose.
So what would be the most clear language for where it says on town roads? Would that be on town maintained roads or on class 5 and
Any
private
town
roads
road.
in town?
It says, by the way it's written, any town road. Any state roads would be 75, which would be 125, 4,
Minimum.
9.
Okay, yeah.
And then all the
Gotcha.
rest of the roads would be 40 feet because they're town roads.
Got
But
it.
John, I think, I hear Steve's point, which is town roads, does that mean private roads? I mean, it's not clear to me. You know what I mean?
Private roads are not designated as town private ways are not designated as town.
Do you want to change it to say,
So does,
other than state roads?
I think that'd be better.
Class 5, would that be, cover it and be correct and clear?
Well, not necessarily.
No.
Because the subdivision went in for the commercial part going back behind Liberty Truck. Until the town accepts that road and takes it over, technically it's a private road. So therefore, they would have to go back to the 75 foot, which is the intent was to allow that to be developed in a commercial way that could be feasible. So, but if you did other than state roads, then it would encompass a private road being built by a developer or an existing town road.
To me, that's better.
okay, so rather than on town roads, you're saying, let's modify that
Other than state
other than
roads.
state roads.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely more inclusive.
And can we list those state roads explicitly because we have so few? Does that make sense?
Why do?
Yeah, we could just say route. Well, maybe we could go back and look at it and go to 75 feet along 125, 4 and 9, and then do 40 feet on all other roads. We could do it something like that to make it more clear.
I mean, other than people that are sitting here, maybe 20 other people, most people don't know. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know the difference between state and town. You know, they don't understand why
Well,
one's
if-
one and something's
Well,
something
wait a
different.
minute,
you know?
so, but if you're going to go build a road, or you're gonna develop an area, you're gonna know whether you're on state road or not.
I think that's an assumption.
Well, but I
You don't
think,
think the engineers and the surveyors know whether they're on a state road or not?
yeah, but I think,
I think,
I hope they do.
I think if we say 4, 125 and 9, there's no question. Anybody who, even if it's not an engineer, Joe Citizen knows. I think that's the clearest way to do it.
you get a guy that wants to start a business that doesn't know anything and he buys a lot thinking he can do something, because that's what happens. And then he goes and gets a surveyor and an engineer, you know, and they, oh geez, I don't know, I have to look into that. I mean, how many times have you told someone sitting in the audience, you better read our zoning before you come back next time? You know, so I think it's clearer to,
I think 4, 9, 125 is as clear as you can get.
right.
So
If there was 40 of them we had to list, that'd be a different
Yeah.
story.
Okay, how about,
126, 202,
how about other than
others.
state,
26 and 202 on the regional commercial zone.
oh, well,
okay, how about this? Other than state roads, parent, routes 4, 9, and 125, and a parent, the minimum front setback is 40 feet.
Perfecto.
So right now, I just want to read what we have in place. So right now in the chart, it says 75 feet for the roads, and that's what the chart says.
Mhm.
So we're going to do a footnote that says that 75 feet doesn't apply to certain roads, or should we do a footnote that only applies to?
Only applies
Only
to,
applies.
So we could
Well,
do the
wait a minute.
footnote,
I think you
that's what
should
I'm
say
saying. Let's make
only
it clean so it's understandable. I
Right.
think it was getting.
We don't want to say it's only applicable, then it's gonna be, well, wonder if you're not on the state road.
Well, then it, oh, we could put 40 here and then put an E and say 75 on state roads. I mean, it's getting wordy the way it was going on a white, but it's actually becoming more confusing.
Oh, you're way
I mean, we're trying to clarify it, not make it more
Always, always.
confusing.
outside of that.
Right.
Outside of state road. It's 40.
So if you go to,
Why is,
page 14 of the zoning, you can see how the format.
His point is to the state road.
Right.
on other
It's
than
the state road.
state
It's not included
roads,
here.
4, 9, and
You're better off just saying
125, the minimum
49.
front setback is 40.
Yeah.
How is that confusing?
Okay, that works for me. I mean,
That would be footnote L.
What the hell?
Yeah.
So just so we can get it, so other than state roads,
On other than state roads, parents, routes 4, 9, and 125, and to parents, the minimum front setback is 40 feet.
or 9, because Route 9, I think there's a little portion of Route 9. No, Route 9 doesn't
9
touch the
is
regional commercial,
neighborhood.
because you got neighborhood residential. The regional commercial doesn't hit Route 9.
It has commercial overlay.
Regional commercial doesn't touch Route 9?
Yeah, because you got the general, you got that town center comes in, and then you got neighborhood residential where it wraps around
Where
all of
I'm
Route 9.
at is.
Oh.
So see if we use
Over
125,
by
125.
the new gas station, that area, that's not regional.
No, because you got
That's
town
125.
center, and then you got neighborhood residential.
It's easier.
Wraps around Route 9.
425.
So the
it's
only
only-
thing in regional commercial is
Only
425 for state roads.
All right,
Delete the
so
whole.
get rid of 9 and just say
It's gonna be
parents,
4,
routes 4
4,
and 125.
Good catch, Don.
And I'm fine with the change from 4 to 5. That makes perfect sense. I looked that up.
Okay,
Paragraph E.
So everybody's
all right,
in agreement to move that one forward as written?
yep,
Yes.
okay.
Paragraph E would still stay in because that has to do with the green belt buffer. It has nothing to
Yes.
do with setbacks.
Right, but it's to change, it's to fix the typo.
Yeah, from 4 to.
And in
Paragraph
fact,
E
it's
from
saying
4 to
that
5.
doesn't need to be part of the Carol's saying that doesn't actually need to be part of the amendment. Fixing a typo is
It
allowed.
can be done without vote of the public.
Right. So, yes, but we do need to change that. But that doesn't need to be part of the amendment.
All right, number 6, amended section 6.2.
Yes.
622,
This is
parents
the
3. The
wrong-
total amount of open space that is identified as open water, wetland soils, exposed ledge, or other terrain conditions that would normally be considered otherwise undevelopable shall not constitute more than 50% of the area required as open space within a conservation subdivision.
Yes, and this is the Ron Allard amendment.
Yes, it is.
And I'm saying it's unnecessary because at this point in the application process, you were proposing what open space there is. But Ron feels this is.
But I think the explanation really makes it clear what the intent is for that.
Yeah.
Right.
So that they can give more open space, they don't, without having to add uplands.
Yeah, the last applicant basically thought by adding more, he had to do more, required to do more open space, upland space. I don't think, if you're required to do 10 acres of upland space and you do more, you give more open space, you shouldn't be required to do 12 or 14. I think if you meet the minimum requirement and you give us more open space, it's better.
I think this clarifies that if they want to give extra, they have a right to without.
Yeah, without
Without a penalty.
without an amendment, without an approval by us,
Right.
without a waiver, all that kind of stuff.
Would it be good
think
to,
we-
where it says required as open space, to have a citation for where that requirement is in the zoning ordinance?
It is part of this
Just make-
ordinance that you have right here, the one that read it.
Yeah, it's
Right.
part of 622.
223.
Clear enough?
Everybody good with that one?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
The Ron amendment.
All right, number 7.
Jeff's still on the fence.
7.3, parents 1, a home occupation shall only be conducted totally within the structure of a single-family dwelling and only by the occupants of the dwelling.
This got brought up because of a recent case in front of the ZBA.
Mm-hmm.
Where didn't define the number of employees in a home occupation. The general definition says it's the occupants of the house, but because we have a definition, you can't use the general definition to enforce the rules. The home business, which requires planning board approval, you can only have 2 employees. So a home occupation we have now technically has 8, which was not the intent of what the ordinance was. And this is just to clarify that it's supposed to be the occupants of the house for a home occupation.
Right. A home occupation was supposed to be the occupants. They're establishing, it's like an insurance agent setting up an office in his house, a 1-tier beauty salon, something like that. A home business was the next step above that, but the way things have been interpreted by the lawyers,
So Z,
that a home occupation can actually be more expansive than a home business. And that was not.
I think that was-
the original intent.
I think this makes it clearer for moving forward.
yeah,
The other person would be grandfathered because of what's going on, but there's also been a request for a rehearing, which we'll find out tomorrow whether the zoning board's going to grant the rehearing, which could change the outcome of that other case.
so my confusion on their hearing, they decided, because they were unclear and
They decided. there was no
disjointed, it was a
violation.
shit show.
They listened to the applicant's attorney and everything that was said,
What do you really think?
and they didn't listen. None of the abutters that were against it
We're allowed.
were able to speak. Well, one of them spoke and he got cut off and says, we'll listen to you later. So all the rest of them waited and then they closed the case where they didn't get to speak. And
Right.
that's what they're using for the reason to come in for the rehearing.
Well, I don't want to focus too much on one particular
Well,
case.
we're using a case
A case is
based on
shown,
this,
well,
and I think that the decision was made in air.
well,
So,
but regardless of that, what the case did is it illustrated that we've got
We have a problem, we got to fix.
our regulations,
right, but
our ordinance.
I have a suggestion. Need to add square footage of how much.
We got that.
yeah,
Next amendment.
It's in the next one.
so
So number 7 is straightforward. Number 8 is going to take a little more discussion.
Yeah. But yeah, number 8 clarifies that the intent of a home business, a home occupation is that the people living in that home want to do some type of small business.
yeah, but I don't think that clarifies that at all. It just says a home occupation shall only be conducted totally within a structure.
Have we
Doesn't
moved
say
on
anything
from
about-
number 7?
What's that?
Did we vote, like, no?
No,
no.
so there's two things that was added to 7. One was totally inside the structure because they had storage for their business use outside of the structure that was determined that we didn't clarify they had to be inside the structure.
Right.
Then the other one, and only by the occupants, that's technically what a home occupation is. So there's actually 2 little changes that were added to try to clarify our regulations.
And you get, then you got to look at this within the context of then following home occupation is home business.
Right, but I guess my point is a home occupation, if I'm having a home occupation and my home occupation requires the use of my garage, I think that's perfectly acceptable to
No,
do.
that's a home business if you go by our regulations. If you look on page 30 of your zoning. If it's like conducted outside the house, it has to go to home business where you need planning board approval.
Okay.
And that's written already in your home business, not home occupation.
Is that if the garage is a separate building from? the-
Correct. If it's connected, it's all part of the dwelling. It's technically, you could use it as part of your home occupation, but it's still only supposed to be 30% of the dwelling space, and a garage is not a dwelling space.
See, that's the part that I think that needs to be parsed, not, this part.
Well,
Oh, that's on the next one. You go to number 8, we try to work on that.
so first off, what the case demonstrated is the zoning ordinance can be misused to get around the restrictions of home business by pointing to the vagaries that are in the home occupation.
As the zoning board chair had said, this is a poorly written,
Yeah, no, I hear him, but has
that's
a
why.
lawyer weighed in?
Than this, because he said it's a poorly written regulation and you guys got away with something because the regulations was written so poorly. That was a statement he made in the meeting. So I brought this forward to try to, let's straighten this out so it doesn't happen anymore.
And I agree with you, but because he said in watching the meeting, what he said, has a lawyer weighed in on whether that's,
I think.
was it a poorly written
I think-
regulation or a
I
poorly
think this is
decided
a
case?
Discussion we have to have outside the meeting because of what's going on and the legal stuff going on.
Right.
So
But,
I don't want to.
Either way, Jamie, you're clarifying the language.
right, I mean,
mean-
that's what I'm saying, instead of focusing on the.
In
one
fact, it's
case,
open to, in
now
fact, it's
that
open to
this issue got
interpretation.
raised, if you go back and look at it, we aren't very specific about what distinguishes a home occupation from a home business. And this will clarify that difference.
Yeah, and if you look up a definition of home occupation, it says a business carried out by the occupant of the home. But we couldn't use the general definition according to the attorney in that zoning case because we have definition.
So it can be argued either way, Jamie. The fact that we we didn't get the result we wanted, we think maybe the language supported it. Let's make the language stronger, so.
And I agree with that. I guess totally within the structure, if you have an existing house with a garage, or you have a house with an attached garage, and somehow you can use the attached garage, but you can't use the non-attached garage, or you could
You
build,
could strengthen it more to say not including a garage, whether it's attached or not. But having the garage as a separate structure is a home business where they come and get planning board approval. That's already in the regulations. If you look on.
Yeah, home business talks about,
So there's two different things. One's a home occupation and one's a home business.
Once you start using the attached garage, it bumps over, Jamie.
Occupation is done within the home. You don't have customer traffic in and out. Business has customer traffic in and out. So if I was an engineer and I work on my computer in my home, that's my occupation. As a business, I have customers coming and going.
well,
Well,
No.
you get a girl that does listing hairdressing. She has one seat. So she could do that.
so down in the
Accountant.
basement,
An accountant will come in and have their
Right.
people come in, or a guy that's a financial advisor has a person come in. Those are all small little uses that fits within a residential neighborhood, which has no impact. It's conducted in, say, a room inside the house. That's what a home occupation is supposed to be.
right.
It can have traffic, but it's just not a lot of traffic.
Right, same idea, yeah.
all right. I'm fine with 7 then. Anybody else?
Fine.
So motion to approve 7.3,
Yep.
parents 1.
Yeah, we're all good with
Move
That
that.
one's good.
Move 7.3 forward.
Good to move forward, anyway.
Okay,
Number 8,
Agreed.
7.3.3, no more than 30% of the dwelling's net living area shall be devoted to such use with a maximum area of 500 square feet.
The italicized part was the part that was added. I looked around, that's what I found for a home occupation, or some local towns have what they call business 1, business 2, business 3. So they'd be like the business 1, which is compatible with our home occupation because of how they do, their home business stuff. Now at 500 feet, I guess that was the thing I thought the board might want to discuss more. Is 500 feet reasonable to you? You think it should be 300 feet? Do you think it should be 800 feet? I guess that's where, I pulled the number out that I saw that was kind of consistent with the other neighboring municipalities
well, what's the maximum that we've got in there for an ADU?
for a size. An ADU, if it's attached, it's 1,000 feet.
1,000
If
feet.
it's detached, it's 750.
I think 3.
So the only
I-
variable that kind of catches my attention is Barrington has some larger homes, so you take a 3,000 square foot home, if you're talking 30% of that, you're gonna be roughly
900.
900 square feet.
And that's kind of a
500.
major use in a residential neighborhood for a small business. That's the reason. So that other one that was in front of the ZBA, they got 2,000 square feet of business use in that residential home. So at what point does it come, because if you read the definition of home occupation, it talks about being compatible with the neighborhood, not impacting and the whole bit. So how big can a thing get to where it's no longer detriment to a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood?
And I think 500 feet is pretty generous. Andy.
Because
That's what I'm
I could do.
I want to go
Yeah.
300 feet. I don't care what you guys come up with a number. I just
Cut off
want
a-
to put
let's cut
something.
off-
Yes. Well, and then also the confusion. I mean, one of the things is net living versus now, I expect.
Well, in my mind, living space is where you have dwelling. It's not the garage and the basement. You can't say, because we put a business in the garage and basement, that's not living space. Was an interpretation presented by an attorney. I don't buy it, but I don't have a vote when the ZBA voted, so.
Right. And that's what I'm saying about what they heard and what they agreed to listening to from that lawyer, I don't think should have been applicable, but I mean,
But if we make it clean here, they can't say it's a.
but how are we interpreting
But
net
it's
living
finished
space?
space, not unfinished space, right?
Well, living space to me is space where you're dwelling.
Yeah.
It's
But if
not
you
your
get a
basement, It's not your.
you get-
That's
you-
not living space in my mind, but I didn't have a vote.
No, but
Yeah,
if you take a
if you
walkout
have a
basement, and convert
basement,
it to
yeah.
living space
Yeah, that's.
Some basements are finished in living space,
As long as they're.
after the fact.
Right.
whatever.
So I think the 500, but I guess my thing from watching the case is the net living area and someone parsing that out. Is
Right.
there a way to change
They can
that?
expand the definite, well, I would argue that setting a square foot limit, that eliminates that whole problem altogether.
That's the reason why I brought it forward.
Yeah.
Now, the 500 isn't a hard number. I just try to.
Right.
You guys might want to go with 300.
That
You
way-
might want to go with 1,000. I don't care.
That's a lot. though.
Andy?
Yeah, John did the legwork and he did comparable locations and come up with 500. Go with it.
Yeah, I don't have a.
I don't think it's
not the
unreasonable.
500, it's, I was talking about the net. I think the 500 is fine. I mean, I could,
I mean, I think,
So a 2,000 square foot house, would give you, 30% of 2,000 would give you, 600.
Yeah.
So if you max it out at 5, they could have 500 as a max. They wouldn't be able to get the full 30.
what you're talking about to me, Jamie, is not a problem. If I got a house and I want to do, you know, a one-seat, hair salon, but I got to finish the basement to make that happen, and now I go from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet, and
right,
I
but
bump this to 500
the
feet.
argument was 30% of net living space. Then they said, we're in a basement, it's not net living space, so now we have no size constrictions. We can do whatever we want in a basement.
No, that was.
Living space has got to be conditioned.
It was saying,
One of the
if you count the garage at the business in, the basement, the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, it's finished. They counted all of that together and said, we got 8,000 square feet of space in the house, but it's not all living space. It was 8,000 feet. So now they could do they got 2,000 square feet of business in there. So at what point is a business too big to be compatible and not negative to a resident?
But then he circled back and said, the basement is not living space. We're completely in the basement. So we're not really doing any business in the home at all because we're in the basement.
And a size limit was based on their whole house.
How about this?
Why do you?
Why
have
are
to
we-
have that 30%?
Exactly
Right.
where I was going. Let's just drop the 30%. That ends the whole argument. We simply say
A maximum.
it's going to
area
be
of 500
within,
square feet.
within the dwelling and maximum area of 500 square feet, period.
So whether it's 1,000 square foot house or a 3,000 square.
Right.
Doesn't-
I guess the impact on the neighborhood, the
Well,
size, if it's 500 feet, it's the
Right.
same impact, no matter what the size of the house is.
Right.
I like that.
Normal
So
basement.
drop the 30 and just go with the 500.
So
Is everybody happy with the?
forget the, so,
Yeah, get through the little window.
Yeah.
so should we use the same language as 731 and say, that it'll be within the structure of a single family dwelling and
Not exceed 500.
not exceed a maximum area of 500 square feet.
Why not just change it so it says no more than a maximum area of 500 square feet of the dwelling shall be devoted for,
Or, okay, how about, yeah, a maximum of 500 square,
Devoted to the home occupation?
yes.
Yes.
Good job, Andy.
More better.
More, yeah.
okay, so we'll get rid of 30% and that'll never be an issue again.
Alright. So as that one's done, everybody good moving that forward?
Yep.
All right, number 9.
Okay,
Yeah,
this was,
the home
This was-
business shield, oh, go ahead.
yeah, this was one I added that this addresses issues that it turns out that the way, right now, we say you can conduct a home business in a separate structure,
Yes.
but
Marked up.
we really didn't nail that down as to what the total square footage could be, what that constitutes. So this was a stab at the home business shall be totally conducted, including storage, which was an issue that's come up, whether storage associated with a business is considered part of the home business, or that's just something separate and different that has no bearing, which I think the consensus is, well, yeah. I mean, if you've got a 2,000 square foot home business and you got a 10,000 square foot warehouse, the warehouse doesn't get excluded. So shall be conducted, including storage, within the designated accessory and dwelling structures, because you could divide up your home business. You could have it in the basement and you could have it in a garage, a detached garage. You could split the business. So it's to say, so it's to make this all inclusive. So the home business shall be conducted, including storage, within the designated accessory and dwelling structures, but may occupy an area outside said structure if this area is adequately screened with fencing or vegetative buffer. Now, those words are already in there. In no case shall the activities of the home business, both inside and outside the accessory and dwelling structure, so it's the total square footage, occupy more than, and this is a stab, 3,500 square feet.
Well, right now it says 45.
Right now it says 4,500, but in a residential neighborhood, 4,500 square feet seems like a pretty darn big business. And I don't know what the right number is, but I would at least
Especially when we get more and more conservation subdivisions where you're getting smaller lots.
yeah,
Right.
When you had the bigger lots, when you got 2, 3, 4 acres on each lot, it's probably something different. So if you go to these guys that got a 5 or a 10 acre lot, in the rural parts of town, is totally different than a guy that's got a half acre lot in a conservation subdivision
But if-
on the lake.
but if it's designated as a residential neighborhood or general residential, you still want to limit the size of businesses that are going into these neighborhoods. I don't care how much.
And I agree, that's why, but the comment I was trying to make is the 3,500, I think, is better than the 4,500, but if you have one of them little 1 acre lots or a 3/4 acre lot, that 3,500 all of a sudden is huge. Where if a guy's on a 10 acre lot, that 3,500 is not big.
Right.
Well, and I think that's exactly what I was gonna say. If you've got somebody that's got 10 acres or 20 acres and they run, for example, their own construction business and they have an excavator on a trailer and a couple of bobcats
In a
and,
garage.
That would be a
And a
contractor
garage.
storage yard by our definitions. It wouldn't be coming in as a home business.
oh, okay.
It'd be coming in as a contractor storage yard. I got one of them coming before.
But it just, yeah, so I don't know what the right number is. I just threw down 3,500.
What if we did worst case scenario? What's the smallest lot? Residential lot?
Oh,
Jerry River Long Shores, you could probably go 0.2,
yeah.
0.21 maybe.
But can you build a 3,500 square foot building on those lots?
Not without a serious variance.
Right.
Yeah.
So those ones are excluded already.
Not necessarily. Variances are given out there all the time for residential homes.
There's a couple, I think, that are down around 0.1.
Well,
Yeah, but 3,500, but 3,500 square feet?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, if someone came in to build a huge
Well,
barn,
isn't- 0.1 is just about 4,100 square feet, right?
Yeah, some of them lots are really small out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, you could
All
still
right.
put 3,500 square feet
so
on
based
that.
on this
It meets your
discussion,
setback.
wonder if we said, then we do a cutoff and say 4,500 square feet on lots over 1 acre, 2 acre, and 2,500 square feet for lots under that size.
Or do a maximum lot coverage of 25% or something like that to kind of, that way, as the lots grow or shrink,
Yeah.
kind of have something.
Yeah, I think that's
I
better.
think that's a better
25% is
approach.
an awful lot.
Maximum lot coverage.
I'm just throwing it out there as a number. I wasn't saying to use it.
So what's 1 acre? 40,000?
43,560.
Right. So.
1 acre would be
a
roughly
quarter
4,000
would
square
be-
feet.
That's not rounded off at all.
No, that's right on.
No, he's talking 25% coverage.
Maybe we do
10,000
10%,
square
maybe
feet.
10%? 10%?
But if you did, yeah, 10%,
Yeah.
4,000, that actually is a bigger number than the 3,500 you have here,
Right.
but still is a somewhat.
But you could do it as a max. So if someone has a quarter acre lot, all of a sudden that max is 10% of that quarter acre.
Yeah,
I think 10% is a reasonable number for maximum lot coverage.
Sure.
What do you think,
Mhm.
Jeff? You're kind of rubbing your face there.
No, I actually had an itch.
I thought you were pondering, thinking deep thoughts.
So leave the
So-
35 with a 10% max, is that what you?
Yeah, I think that,
You guys are going?
I think that, well, I think of going down from 45 to 35 is a pretty big drop.
So you're saying 45
Leave the.
10%
10%
max?
I
or
think
10
if we leave a 4 in, it's okay, maybe go down to 4,000 square feet, 10% max. That way, an acre, you can get 4,000 square feet, that sounds reasonable to me. 10% of an acre, you can still get the 4,000 square feet.
That's still a big building.
That's
Huge.
That's still a big building.
Yeah.
And it's it's a home business. This is not a commercial business. You're thinking about a home business in a residential neighborhood. So you take a 4,000 square foot garage, they say, I'm gonna put a business in it, and you got right in a residential neighborhood with a house on it, that's gonna have a huge impact to that.
Yeah, maybe you're right,
neighborhood.
maybe you're
Well,
right.
it depends what it's doing. I mean, you look around a lot, there's a lot of places in Barrington that have big old barns that are,
Yeah.
and if I'm gonna go in there and detail or do, fabric repair, I'm not having much of an impact, but I park everything inside that barn and I use a lot of space. But if I'm gonna start a small manufacturing operation and there's.
So, but an
pipelines
80
in place-
but let's say 80 by 50 building is your 4,000 square feet.
That's what I wanna build for my
That was
RV.
it's a big red
And then if
barn.
someone, I mean, there's lots of those
That's
around
about the
town
size
is what
of
I'm
an indoor
thinking,
range.
Right.
And if.
They're not on the quarter acre lots, but they're on the bigger lots. So those 1 acre, well, that's
Well,
5 acre.
that was a
lots, 10 acre
10 acre
lots.
lot. Okay.
No, 2 acres, still be limited to 4,000 or whatever we put in here. It'd be
Right.
that or 10%. It'd be both, Jeff. So you
Yeah,
gotta,
so a 2 acre lot, you could put the 4,000 in anyways.
Well,
yeah.
1 acre lot, you could put.
Probably haven't
4,000.
limited
Well, currently it's 4,500, right?
let me ask, let me back this up a little bit, because I feel like, so if you have a 2 acre lot or a 1 acre lot, would you, I don't even think you'd be able, and you got a house in the middle of it, you wouldn't even be able to meet the setbacks to build a garage of that size.
Yeah, you would.
Original.
If you don't have any wetlands in your lots, regular,
But that's
built basically square lot or something like that. If you got a funny shaped lot or a bunch of wetlands where you gotta stay out of, all of a sudden, you got those constraints. But if you had a perfect lot, a 43,560, you do a 2,000 square foot house. And usually that's gonna be a 2-story house, so that's only 1,000 square foot of a footprint. And then you put, another building with a 4,000, you're only using 5,000 square feet of that lot. So
You can
it's
fit it.
still
Problem.
less than 10% of the total lot.
Right.
You can definitely fit it in on a 1 acre lot.
So I mean, you'd meet the setbacks, but it's still, the whole idea is a home business would be coming as a use in a residential neighborhood with minimum impact, if you go by what this is. Now, if someone's coming in to do an auto detailing or a contractor storage yard, as Andy mentioned, stuff like that, we have those in the regulations where you'll be doing them as a site approval, and it would be based on the 4.3, the conditional use permit, that you would apply to it because of it being in the residential neighborhood. It might be better to leave those types of uses under your site review instead of letting it go in under a home business, I guess is the point I'm trying to get to.
I actually agree with that.
So do I.
I mean, that was the concept of no. So the bigger barn, like you were talking about, if someone come in and did a site review, it makes sense. They got a big enough lot, they can do it. You wouldn't even limit size. It would be based on, what they're actually proposing and what they're doing. And then you're looking at your parking requirements and the whole bit. Now, home business, it's like saying, okay, I'm gonna put this beside my house.
It's like the wildlife center up on
Yeah, he actually came in for a site review
Beauty Hill Road.
Well, he didn't have a choice.
That was
on it
conditional
because
use.
it's a
because of how it was, because of how our
Conditional use.
regulations.
Right, because, so our regulations covered that kind of.
Right.
So we could leave it at 40, I don't know, we could leave it at 4,500 square feet
In 10%.
and no more than 10%,
Yeah,
or 10% lot coverage, whichever is less.
whichever is
Yeah.
less, yeah.
Whichever's less, yeah.
And I think, remember that guy was coming in with the graphics business on 125?
Right.
He might have wanted a big building so he can take in RVs and stuff. I'm thinking for him, maybe we don't want to go too far, too low on the square footage kind of thing. Because you might,
So he came in as a home business, as a regular
yeah,
business.
but let's say he wanted,
This is under a home business, so that's two different things. So he could still come in under a regular business use and go through the whole thing as a site approval. Where a home business would come in and say, I'm adding this next to my house in the middle of a residential neighborhood. There's no 3.4 to consider the impact to the neighbors. It's like, okay, straight up, you're allowed this big building in there and I'm gonna stick it right next to my neighbor's house. As long as I meet my 30-foot setback to the side, I'm good.
So we'll add on to that sentence, we could leave it at 4,500, occupy no more than 4,500 square feet or a maximum lot coverage of 10%, whichever is less. And that does away with the concerns we have about people with small building lots putting up.
Yeah, I think the percentage thing.
Right. Right?
But if they can always come in and have a site review anyways, why don't you just keep the number really small, like 500 square feet like we did on the other one? And if they want,
So then if they want to come in for a site review, they can do it for a larger thing. Because the whole idea of a home business is not to have it overpower the neighborhood or overwhelm the neighborhood. It's something that's supposed to be compatible. So, 4,000 really isn't compatible. And if someone wants that bigger building, they can always do site review, like you said, as a regular straight up thing.
So we had one stop trailer, that was a site review, right?
And he came in under a home business.
Well, it says all home business has to have a site plan and, planning board
but
approval.
he's got like 3 different buildings on that lot.
Right.
Yeah.
He had them there, they were existing.
No.
They took down the existing one and put smaller ones up. So because he actually decreased the use, it was something that was allowed.
But that was all
Made the
after
building
planning board
smaller.
approval. That was all after.
Did it actually get smaller?
Yeah, the buildings got smaller, quite a bit smaller. That other building was.
That other building.
Even at
machine
500
shop
square
that
feet,
they had.
you buy-
But the layout is
That could be-
much better now for functional use.
Yeah, except
Well,
for storing.
A regular 24 by 24 garage, which would be compatible with the neighborhood, is 600 square feet. So I think if you went to like 1,000 square.
Yeah, what's a two-car garage?
Two-car garage is around 600 square feet. So even if you did something, let's say 1,000 or 1,500, it would give you like a 3-bay garage or something like that to run a business out of.
Yeah.
To me, that's legit. That's
I think that's-
within a residential
I
neighborhood.
think that makes more sense
But
because,
to have a 4,500 square foot building that's stuffed in between a couple of houses.
yeah, and because I'm grappling with old Barrington where you had huge lots, big barns, and yeah, we're,
And that's the reason why these old
Independent-
regulations used to work.
and now it's like we're building all these small developments where you're on top of each other, and now you start to get this.
But remember, the 4,500 or the 3,500, where we end up, that would be the cap for the big old lots you're talking about. So, what we're trying to do is 10% for small lots. We've covered that. Now, the big old lots where the guy's got 20 acres, why can't he put a 3,500 or a 4,500 square foot structure on his
Site
property?
review,
Well, you can put
that's
the
what-
structure, but
have a
we
site
still want to
review.
run into business, and that's where I think John had a point. I think we should drop it down lower to 1,500,
Or even less.
because 10% of a 1 acre lot is still 4,000. I mean, that's,
But he's still,
4,300.
even if he wants to go out there and do that, he's still got to come in and do a site review, right?
No, for a home business, the review for a home business is totally different than doing the site review, because once you do the site review on your general residential stuff, most of them uses require your 3.4, which is your conditional use permit, which gives you guys some latitude about how you regulate it on the impact of the residential neighborhood.
Oh, it says
Yeah,
the site plan.
So,
Okay.
so a home business doesn't have that type of oversight that you have in that conditional use permit. I mean, I'm not trying to argue the point.
So,
one way or
yeah.
The other, I'm just trying.
Well, it says he has to have a site plan, but he doesn't come before the planning.
Yes, he does. Home business comes before the planning board. Home occupation does.
Okay, yeah. So if they got to come with a site plan,
I say we go lower and then offer higher. If they come in and they need more,
They would have to go for a variance or come in as a regular straight up site approval instead of a home business.
So if you keep it at something low like 500, I do the site reviews and it could be right sized.
If they go bigger than what you allow in your home business, then you can use your 3.4, which is that, if you guys look up the 3.4 in your zoning, you can see the criteria
6 or
on that whole thing that goes through. So if they want to do something larger, then you have the right to look at how it impacts the neighborhood. We
Right,
don't
but
have that
but the problem is that actually by doing that though, you're kind of taking it out of the planning board's hands and you're handing it to the ZBA.
No, you're not. Because what you'll say is the home business is allowed here. You're allowed to do a regular site review to where you guys can use your 3.4 conditional use without going to the zoning board. Because someone could go to the zoning board now and say, I want a home business of 10,000 square feet. And they go to the zoning board and say, here's my hardship. I don't know what that hardship would possibly be to justify it. No more than it would be to say, I want more than 2,000 square feet. What's the hardship that justifies that says that I can't do a regular site review?
How's that going to change with this change? They can always go to the ZBA and ask for relief, right?
They could do that now.
right, and that's the point. I just think 4,500 is huge. I think it should be, more than the
well-
500, but not 4,500.
Right, well,
because-
that's why I
Because
dropped it.
10% of a 1 acre lot is 4,500, doesn't really limit anything. There's no limit there.
I'm going back to, I'm siding with Jeff at 3,500 now.
Yeah, well, that's why I dropped it down. I thought 4,500 was too big, but I wasn't sure what the number was, so I threw 3,500 out there.
I think a 3-car garage with an office space is adequate for a home business.
That'd be probably
1,500.
1,500 to 2,000 square feet, depending on how they format that garage.
I like round numbers, 2,000
All right.
sounds pretty good.
That's a big drop from 45.
Yeah, well, I think
Huge
that's
drop.
But they could still come in for a regular site review for something larger.
the important part here. That's what we're focusing on. And that's the issue that arose, is neighborhoods are becoming more dense and you don't
Well-
want businesses in
well,
every
The
neighborhood.
10% covers that.
Yeah, but
No,
just,
it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It's
because
more
it's
than 1,000
300
square feet on a
feet.
1 acre lot,
well, you think about that. That's essentially building another home on the lot.
bigger than the home that's there.
Bigger than the.
Actually doubling a home.
Right.
Something twice the size of a home on the lot.
That's why I think.
I like 1,000, I could live with 2,000.
Pardon me?
I like 1,000, I could live with 2,000.
Yeah, and
I guess I could live with 2.
I think two's reasonable.
Two,
Do.
buddy?
Feelings a little bit hurt about the 5.
You like the 500.
No,
Negotiated.
I'm just
Negotiated.
answering. So I think 2 is very reasonable compared to the 4,500 at the top.
Yeah, I thought the 4,500 was too big, so, great.
10%, right?
Dynamics change.
Well, is that the
10% 's in there.
hub is, Jamie?
Yeah,
As the planning looking
Yeah.
forward,
Yeah.
we have a
10% in.
neighborhood now that we don't
General
have.
residential, 5 acre lots.
Solve the problem.
Oh, boy. That's not on the list.
All right.
Not going there.
So we can move on
Okay.
from number 9.
Okay,
Everybody
so it's
good?
now going to say occupy no more than 2,000 square feet or a maximum lot coverage of 10%, whichever is less.
Yep.
All right, I'm good.
Everybody like that?
Yeah.
Are you in favor of 9 and 10? 951, parent 5. This ordinance shall not prohibit the construction of principal and accessory structures within the buffer zone of lots that legally existed on or before March 13th, 2001. That's clarifying
Right.
the language of confusion surrounding buffer zone, right?
It's whether it's applicable or not.
So what it really changes, when we brought the thing of on before, and then got crossed out, the whole stuff that's crossed out was what the board decided at that last meeting. So before was to clarify the way it was applied, which was if a lot was unapproved when the planning board approved the subdivision, then the buffer didn't apply. Because I actually had one I looked up last week, where it was a 99 subdivision. The guy come in, his lot was really small. I told him I needed a site plan before I could give him a building permit because he was trying to put an addition on. It turned out about 1 foot of his addition would have been in the buffer. So I looked his lot up. His lot was approved in 99, which is pre-2001. There was no building on the lot, so therefore it was an unapproved lot that was approved by the planning board. So I told him the buffer didn't apply, and that's how we've been doing it.
Well, but the thing was that we also had the language in there that says, or otherwise legally existed.
Right.
So that meant that even if it wasn't an unimproved lot, if it legally existed at the time of the zoning ordinance change, then it was still covered. However, what we discussed was that language of, or which otherwise legally existed, was confusing to people. And so, and we've always interpreted that to mean, whether it was improved or unimproved, that if it legally existed on or before March 13, 2001.
To a point. If it was an unimproved lot, I mean, if it was, when the subdivision was approved, if there was a building on that lot when the subdivision got approved,
Yep.
the buffer would apply even if it was pre-2001, is how I've been applying it. But only on the ones where I looked it up and there was a building already on that lot when it was subdivided. Because there are some subdivisions that have an older house on it, and that lot would have been an approved lot during the subdivision. So that's the reason why I added the on. Now, when you guys changed it the last meeting to take it out, so all of them, there's gonna be maybe a dozen lots that will be affected that no longer would have a buffer, that would have a buffer because that lot was developed when the subdivision was approved. But there's only be maybe like a dozen of them in town.
Can you explain that one more time?
Okay, so there was a lot subdivision, let's say on Trans Road, there was a one over there. There was an older farmhouse. It got broke into like 6 lots. One of the lots had a house already on it, so that was an approved lot. So the buffer would apply to that one. The subdivision I'm talking about, the buffer applies to all of them because it was after 2001. But because it was an existing house there, if it would have been before 2001, the lot that had the house on it, buffers would apply to that, but it wouldn't apply to the other lots because of the way this ordinance is written. It says on unimproved lots are approved by the planning board. So anytime it touched planning board subdivision approval, it applies if the lot was developed, but it didn't apply if it was undeveloped. But any other lots, whether they're developed or undeveloped, it didn't apply to because of that or thing at the end. That's how I've interpreted it and my 2 predecessors interpreted it.
I'm confused. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, the use
So-
of March 13th, 2001, that date is significant. And that is because the way I assume the reason that date was used was because that was an update of the zoning ordinance, and they didn't want people who had something in process to be caught in the lurch. So I guess it is confusing, and maybe it should be changed, but maybe the way to change it is to just eliminate 9.51 parentheses 5 entirely, or otherwise move towards ensuring that everyone has to follow the wetland buffers going forward. Have a sunset on this.
Yeah, I completely disagree with that one, but
I think the change that you
This
proposed,
affects
the
me.
change that you proposed hits 99% of the way that the rule is applied would be consistent, and it makes it very clear that any lot pre-2001, the buffers don't apply.
Right.
That would make it very clear.
The way you've
Also
got it
would
written.
Make it not in conflict with, was it 9.5? The one about the
So,
setbacks.
so as it's proposed, in layman's terms, anything before March 13th, 2001,
Correct,
whether it had a building on it or no building on it, would not have buffers applied.
correct. The way it's proposed right now.
Okay, that's how I have interpreted it should have been done. It should, That's so I agree with that.
So, and then anything between 2001 and 2009 has a 35-foot setback, 97, and then anything between 97 has no buffers and no setbacks because of how the regulations are written. If you actually look at 9.51 parentheses 1, so if you got to look at parentheses 1 and parentheses 5 together to come to how that zoning is applied and how it's, because the first part 1 was a modification to make it clear that there was a buffer between 97 and 2001. So that whole thing on the one about pre-2001, that the buffers would apply to other lots if they were developed, that's in complete conflict to 9.51 parentheses.
Right. So, yeah, 951 says it was only applicable after this date.
Right, and then there's a 35-foot setback between 97 and
Right.
2001.
So what the change that we're proposing here to say,
It clarifies that
it clarifies, and it's now consistent with
0.51.
9.51, which says it's only applicable after this date.
I think it makes the two of them fall together nicely, is what
Yes.
new proposed change.
So now they're consistent.
Yeah, but is that the right way to do it though, John, is my question.
What's that?
Is that the right way to do it? I mean, if I have an existing structure and I go in and modify, the new codes apply. If I have a site where I have a building already, just because I have a building there already, why should I be able to expand it without the existing buffers applying to it?
Okay, so the way the language is written, if you read what's in your zoning book now, if you got it open, what it says is unimproved lots that were approved by the planning board. So
Yep.
what happens is now, because this guy come in, like I said last week, his addition I thought was going to be close to the wetlands and it was a small lot. So I told him he had to get me a plan. I mean, I'm not going to guess and say you got to go ahead and put it there and then find out he's got a zoning violation. So when he went to get it done, he saw he's going to be 1 foot into the buffer. So I looked up the subdivision. The subdivision, I thought he was going to be in the wetlands, to tell you the truth, because of the way the lot was.
Yep.
So when I looked up his subdivision was done in 1999. So that would be pre-2001. There was no development on the lot. So it was an unimproved lot when the planning board approved it. So therefore, the buffers didn't apply to him. So when you do subdivisions, 90% of the subdivisions you guys do has no dwellings on them at all to begin with. 10% of them has like one house on them and they're breaking off 2 or 3 lots or something. So the lots that have no houses, those buffers wouldn't have applied if it was in that time period, but the one that had the house, it would apply just to that one lot. So
And I'm saying, what's wrong with that?
there's nothing wrong with that. That's why it was proposed that I brought forward for the last meeting was on lots. And then as you guys discussed it, you said it was still wordy and not clear that we should just make all lots pre-2001 that it doesn't apply to. So that wasn't something I brought forward, as what you guys decided at the last meeting to make it so it was less wordy.
I guess I'm questioning my thought process from before.
Well, that's why I wanted to explain to you, the change you made did change how it's applied a little bit, but very little. And it only impacts a very small handful of lots. It doesn't impact a lot of lots.
To me, if you get a lot that's before the zoning, but you tear it down, you shouldn't be able to ignore the setbacks and stuff now.
By the town's definition, if you go to buildings coming down or lots that don't conform, and unconforming lots and unconforming structures, if it's because of an act of nature so that it's fallen apart because of rot or a fire or anything, you have a right to rebuild it on that same spot if you do it within a year. So you could tear the building down saying that it's detrimental and it's a hazard. I'm going to tear this down. I can put it in a new one, even if I'm only 10 feet from the property line, you're still allowed to do it.
I'm okay with that. I'm saying that if I have a structure on there now.
Yeah.
That was before the setbacks get put in place.
Yeah.
Now can I take that down and go further, make it bigger? Because
It'd be no different than if you would still have to meet the requirements for like an addition. So I've actually had some that the guy wanted to put an addition on the back of his house. The house was so close to the road that he had to go to a variance for his front setbacks because the house was so close, even though he was adding on the back. So of course, there's a hardship. My house is real close. I'm adding on the back. I'm not gonna make it any more detrimental. So he got the variance to put it in there. So with that said, if the addition or the expansion meets the zoning requirements, they can do it by right. If it can't meet the zoning requirements, they have a right to go to the ZBA because they still have the vested spot of the original house according to, I can give you the section if you want to go to it for the existing.
So my question is, John, were you saying before, maybe I misunderstood what you said. Were you saying before if I have a structure on there now, even I had that structure was on there before, was it 2000?
Oh, if the structure was, if the subdivision was done before 2001, that was
Yeah.
approved by the planning board, and the house was there when the subdivision was approved, then those buffers apply to how I read that regulation.
And I'm saying I think that's right. I think that's the way it should remain.
And that's the reason why we tried to propose that thing to say on lots that I brought forward 2 meetings ago. And before you guys change it to say all lots.
Okay, I guess maybe I'm going backwards, but
Yeah, well, I got confused again. So if I have a house on a lot,
Yeah.
pre-2001.
Yeah.
And buffers don't apply to me.
Depending on when the subdivision was done and if there was a house on it when the subdivision was done.
So say there was no house on it,
No house on it, the buffers don't apply.
but so if there was a house on the bigger piece,
It doesn't matter if it's a bigger piece or one of the smaller ones.
then buffers would.
It would apply if there was a house on the lot when the subdivision was approved, that would be an improved lot, because it says they exempted the unimproved lot. So that means there was no improvements on the lot, which.
So I gotta
But
walk this through
somehow that
again.
doesn't make sense
I know.
because
So
you're
I'm just
saying.
going by what the
Well,
regulation.
I'm just saying, so you got nothing on a lot. And it was approved for subdivision pre-March 13th, 2001.
Yeah.
So then I can come in and build whatever I want without regard to buffers on that lot,
Correct.
right? But if I'm the one house that got peeled off as part of that subdivision, so we got this one house, and we see that frequently.
That's like your.
Big piece of property,
Subdivision you're in.
right? So you got a big piece of property with one house on it. They want to sell off the rest, build 10 lots, 20 lots. So just because they do that, then all of a sudden you're saying though, that the house that's sitting there that existed for half a century suddenly has to comply with the buffer regulations when you can go build another house into.
If you read the current regulations, that's what it says.
Well, I understand that's what maybe.
I don't think it's.
But that makes no sense.
But I think what you're arguing it almost like, it sounds like you're arguing it almost based on today's regulation, but that's not the case. This is all tied to before the regulation was really built out in 2001. So what they're doing is saying, okay, these lots existed because now you have all these lots that may have been unimproved, but because of the buffers and the setbacks, you might not otherwise be able to develop them. So you would have lots that you've been charging is a buildable lot that suddenly could become non-buildable.
And approved by the planning board as a buildable lot, that would become non-buildable. That was the whole reason why that.
Which would create a tax impact because these people would be paying tax.
It would be a taking. You bought a lot. It would be a taking.
Yes.
Right.
And I
Okay,
agree with that. So I just gotta, sorry, I gotta back. So if I have in 2000, I had 50 acres with a house on it and I subdivided it, all the empty lots would have no buffers.
Correct.
In the house that was left on there, what buffer would pertain to that house?
50-foot buffer.
The current 50-foot buffer, and that
Correct,
changes?
yeah.
So if we vote on
That
it,
was an approved lot when it was approved by the planning board. I think the reason why it was written that way is the development of that lot is already there and established. So therefore, they're not taking away the buildable lot, the house lot, because the house lot's there because the house is already on it. And even if the house is in the buffer, it can be repaired, maintained, replaced, and everything in that location. That was the reason why I think that was put in there. It was put in awful wordy to where it's been confusing. That was the reason.
So let me go one step. So if you have that house and we institute a 100-foot buffer, that house from 2000 now has to adhere to the 100-foot buffer too?
No. It
So
would
we have
have
the
to,
50-foot come on that buffer.
because there was the buffer that was, when you read regulations on the 9.5, because the 50, it says there's a 50-foot buffer in the regulations on 9.5. It gives you a 50-foot buffer. There's 100-foot to prime wetlands. It's listed as it. So when you go to the 9.5,
9.5.1, a buffer area of 50 feet is required from the edge of any wetlands.
right,
Right, but that wasn't established in 2000, so how would you come up, when did that 50-foot get applied to that old house that was subdivided in 2000?
Once you
Because
subdivide,
it
that,
says-
that would apply then. The
Right.
Regulations then.
35 in 2000, why is it 50 today? It should be 35 or 20 or
Well,
whatever
but
it was in
let
2000.
me, Jamie, what my point would be is, you've got the house, you're subdividing the house.
Right.
If you want room to expand, give yourself the room to expand when you subdivide.
That's what I'm saying, if he did at that point, in
Well, the thing
2000,
is, if the buffer, let's say the existing house was only 40 feet from that wetland. When you did the subdivision, you did leave your room to expand. But if you apply that buffer after the subdivision is in fact there, saying that it's a developed lot, that buffer, it now applies. You can't build in that buffer, even though you left yourself that buffer when you originally did the
Right.
subdivision.
that's why I'm,
That's Jamie's point. I get it.
Right.
I don't understand how that 2001 established lot with a house on it ever got 50 feet applied to it if in 2000 the setback was 35.
Okay, so 2000,
We're not talking.
there was a 35-foot setback. It wasn't a buffer. So anyways, if you go back to your 9.51, it says this ordinance shall not prohibit the construction of principal or accessory structures within the buffer zone on unimproved lots that were approved for subdivision by the planning board. So they put that in there that it doesn't apply to unimproved lots, but an improved lot it does apply to if you read that, because if it don't, why would you put it in there if you're exempting unimproved lots, you're not exempting approved lots. So they're saying any lot before 2001 that was approved by the planning board that was developed has to meet the buffer, but all other lots don't, because when you go on to that other section where it says, or which otherwise legally existed. So lots that it wouldn't apply to, even if they were developed, are the ones that happened pre-subdivision, before the planning board did it. I'm gonna use this like Berry River, Long Shores. Those are when you used to take a piece of paper, you drew some lines, you recorded the registry of deeds, I got a subdivision.
Right.
I mean, and there's still a lot of them along the lakes. I mean, that's the reason why all them lots exist that way. And some of these small lots that are full of wetlands or ledge or non-buildable and the whole bit are substandard roads. There's the whole reason why we have subdivision regulations today.
Okay, let's try this. So I can understand, and I'm thinking here that the real flying ointment here isn't the unapproved lots that were approved for the subdivision by the planning board. It's the or otherwise legally. What the hell does that mean?
Legally existing as any lot that was before zoning happened. These lots that I talked about, they took the paper and drew some lines and recorded the registry of deeds. Those are legally existing lots of record.
Okay,
They weren't approved by the planning board, but they're legally existing lots of record. So therefore, those are exempt completely from the buffer is how that's written.
why? Why are they exempt?
Because
from
they're
the-
legally,
Because it says or lots that were otherwise legally existing. Those are legally existing lots that weren't approved by the planning board.
because there's no planning board to approve them at the time.
Right.
So they exempted them, so the buffers didn't apply.
And I think that's appropriate.
Right. Because again, you get back to it becomes a taking
Right.
if you don't exempt those.
So the point I was trying to make, and I wasn't trying to confuse you guys, the point I was trying to make is there is going to be a slight change on maybe a dozen lots in town that a buffer would apply, which no longer would apply, but it's going to be very minimal amount of lots. And it's going to make the verbiage really clear. And it's going to be a lot less work on me where I have to go look up to see if the house was there when the subdivision was approved. Every time someone comes in with something that was approved.
Well,
I agree with you. I'm just trying to understand.
2001.
Well, but I'm with Ron that, so if you have a house and if for some reason I wanted to expand my house and I was gonna expand it into the buffer.
That doesn't exist.
That,
It does exist.
it
does
does
exist.
exist.
There's an
Doesn't
improved,
exist on that lot.
because it's an improved, it's an improved.
Well, it does
lot.
on mine, but
improved.
assume it was created before 2001, then,
And if there was no house there, then that buffer doesn't apply to you.
I'll use,
but if my,
If the house was
if the
there,
house existed
then it does apply. But how this,
under the current rules.
but yeah, how this is written, that's how I interpret it.
Well, now that I understand
4,500
what the or which
casino.
otherwise means, which is all these lots that get just drawn on a piece of paper and taken over and registered. I'm coming around to the point where it's like, well, then I don't know why we're changing anything. Just leave it like.
Because every 5 years it comes up that it's not being applied right, going to the selectmen, coming in front of the planning board. Because another person's interpretation is, once something goes on the lot, it's a developed lot.
Right.
So therefore, buffers apply to all places that have a house on them. But that's not what this regulation says. This regulation, it talks to lots that were improved lots at the time of subdivision, not that got improved later and now applies.
Yeah,
I,
but
I've
these
been
are,
here, Jeff, I've been here, this is my 6th year. And this has come up twice in my 2 terms that I've been here.
yeah, so.
So let's get some language to make it black.
Let's clean it up.
The purpose of this amendment is to eliminate
Doing 6
confusion, it
years doesn't
says.
sound like a big problem.
And they did the same thing. They said, we don't see that the interpretation is wrong, so why are we changing it?
what's that, Steve?
Diamond's got his hand up.
So
Yeah.
it says here, the purpose of this amendment is to eliminate confusion. I would struggle to explain what this part of the zoning ordinance does right now, and I could have even more trouble explaining what the effect of the change would be. So picture us having this, we've covered this like 3 times for quite a bit of time. Picture us trying to explain this to 500 people at a deliberative session and how confusing that could be. So I'm not happy with how it is or what's proposed right now.
Steve,
I
I'll give
feel
you an
this-
entire paycheck if you can get 500 people to deliberative session.
And you can't. and
That's not the
zoning-
point, though.
Zoning is not discussed at deliberative session.
But I agree with Steve that I don't understand it as it's written either, because,
It's confusing the way it's written.
or how it's being changed.
Yes.
Where I don't agree with Ron and Jeff is because the same could be applied that if it was a 2-acre minimum and now it's a 3-acre minimum, then that 2-acre lot is just useless now. That's the same thing if you apply the buffers. If now you think you should meet.
Yeah.
No,
current
but
buffers.
you have an existing property on it. You have an existing house on the property.
saying on
No,
unimproved lot.
No, if you have a house.
Yeah.
And it's close to the buffer.
Yeah.
And you want to expand, you
Yeah.
want the new buffers applied, and now you say, no, you can't expand.
Yeah.
It would be the same thing if you bought a lot and had a small house on it. It doesn't, now it's not a non-conforming lot and you can't add to it. It does, it's a
But
taking.
when you bought it, there was an existing house.
Right.
I think if you are too close to the wetlands, I think you have no expectation that you'd be able to expand in the wetlands.
Well,
That's
the
it.
interpretation going the other way, you bought that house. You bought it before 2001. It was subdivided back in 1980.
Yeah.
The house was an existing house that was there when the subdivision happened. When you bought that house, you could expand up to 35 feet from the edge of that, actually, if it was 1980, yeah, up to a 35-foot setback from the wetlands. So you had room, you saved yourself, the person that did it saved themselves 24 foot to put a garage on. You bought that house thinking I could put a garage on. This thing changed all of a sudden, so now you can't put the garage on.
Right, and that's.
So the lot got changed, that's the point.
Right, and that's and that's why we said,
Well,
for, going to your point about, you're gonna restrict it and apply the buffers to an existing structure.
But
This change would eliminate that and just say if the lot legally existed as of that date, then the buffer doesn't apply.
yeah, John, this is not a taking away. This is expanding the exemption. So we're not taking away from anybody. You're expanding the exemption to improve lots. So it's not a takeaway by
No,
not
no.
changing.
What I was saying, let's say you bought your lot before 2001.
Yeah.
And when you bought that lot, there was a house there and you figured I can add a 2-car garage.
Right.
Because I had room to add it. Then, because that house was existing when that subdivision happened, you come in to get a building permit for me to put a garage on, and I say, I know it wasn't on your lot when you bought the house. I know it didn't apply by the time you came forward, but now that buffer applies, you cannot build a garage.
Yeah, but John, my house was built in 1960. If I do an addition, doesn't mean I can apply the code.
If it was built in 1960, you can put the addition on because that was one of the existing lots that didn't get.
No, my
approved by the
point
planning
is, if I build that addition, I can't do plumbing and all the other codes to 1960 when the house was built. I got to apply the new codes to it. So to me, to say, you know, we're going to apply the current regulations to expansions is consistent with the whole code thing.
But say we change.
But the other lots don't have that, other
It's
than.
like- to me, it's like saying that if they change the setbacks on the water for you and they come and knock on your door and say, you have to rip off your deck today because now it's not where it's supposed to be.
No, existing is grandfathered. So we were only talking about, I'm trying to expand.
These lots were
Existing, right.
When the buffer took
I'm
place, these lots existed.
But we're looking, this is to protect the wetland.
Wouldn't
So,
necessarily.
so like John's example, he said before, that small house that he couldn't build on the front side of it because it was
If you're already
too close to setback, but he could build on the backside.
build on your.
This is gonna force the homeowner
No, no.
to come up with a
Compliance
different
with
option.
new code.
Instead of going into the
Have to meet.
buffer
No,
wetland.
you already have,
put it
no,
else on the, if possible.
Well, they can come in front of you and ask for a 9.6.
What you're saying.
Showing that, okay, I got a
You
well
can't do
over
it.
here, my septic's here, I have this issue, I have that issue, so I gotta put it over here.
can't do,
It'd be the same thing they do
And the-
with the zoning board and they're trying to apply setback.
Place.
Let's have a 9.6 in front of the planning board.
you can't go beyond. it.
So the 9.6 grants the right to put something in the buffer, and I guess
I'm saying.
what we're trying to do is clarify the language.
Okay,
Either make it so that it applies to
nobody has a problem.
all lots approved by
Saying
the
when you-
planning board, which I think is wrong,
On the existing.
or
Buffers.
or do away with the buffer. You're talking way less impact on the people by doing away with it than you are to try to enforce it on all lots. And then there's actually been some talk that once a house goes on, then that lot has to apply by it, whether it's a quarter acre lot, all of a sudden there's a wetland next to it. They can't build on it because they have a house there, even if the house was built last year.
Should
They can't put the garage on. They come for me for a building permit.
Ben-
I'm gonna put my house here, my garage here. Yes, I can permit that.
have that example.
Well, I'm gonna hold off on my garage because I can't afford it. I come back next year and go, no, you can put your house in first. You can't have that garage.
That's where I'm confused. And I gotta use an example that I can understand, like my house. My house subdivided, 92
Correct.
and built. What buffer applies to my lot?
None.
No buffer whatsoever.
Correct, because the house was not on the lot when the lot was subdivided.
Now,
If that lot, let's say that was the old farmhouse on that lot when it got subdivided, the buffers would apply to
what
that. house.
buffer?
Huh?
What buffer? The
The
buffer,
50-foot buffer.
the buffer of 97 when it was
No,
subdivided?
2001.
So a constantly changing buffer.
If you read that 9.5 parentheses 5, it says that it backdoored all the way back to any lot that was approved by the planning board that was developed. They only exempted undeveloped lots.
See, I think that's where I guess I'm confused and I think.
And I think that's what the confusion is, and that's what
It
we're
should
trying to
be-
fix so that this doesn't keep coming back up over and over.
But are we fixing it that the buffer that was on that lot when it was created is the buffer that you're stuck with forever?
That's what this would do.
That's what I want.
That's
That's what I want.
That's what this proposed regulation would do.
That's what I'm looking for. If your house and lot was created in 97 or 2002 and then in 03, it changes to 100 feet and then you build your house, no, you subdivide after that point, then it'd be the 100-foot buffer. It wouldn't be retroactive. It wouldn't,
Yeah, and if
it
you
was,
look at the
the buffers were.
9.51, they exempted the stuff out when it came to the setback ones, and the intent was to exempt out the ones for the 2001 buffer, other than those improved lots. So that's where the confusion keeps coming in. So to do what you just said, you want to approve this amendment the way it's written.
all right.
And I don't, Jamie. I don't want to extend the exemption to improve lots. That's where I'm,
Improved lots when they were subdivided, not today's, because they got a house on.
yeah, I'm saying that extending those pre-2001 lots that had existing properties, we're talking about extending that exemption to them, and I'm saying no.
I'm not a big fan of the pre-crime unit, so I like to, if you bought it and owned it and subdivided it, that zoning applied to you then and forever until you subdivide again, and then you have to meet current subdivision. I don't think there should be retroactive
The reason why they
applications.
grandfathered the undeveloped lots was, as Andy said, they didn't want to make them non-buildable.
Right.
They got approved as building lots. They've been taxed as building lots. You can't take the buildability away from them.
And I agree with that, but there's already a house on these lots we're talking about, so we're not taking it to a non-buildable state. We're just saying you can't expand the footprint into the buffer.
So if tomorrow we pass a zoning ordinance that says it's a 150-foot buffer, you want that to apply to your house where you live now and every other house that's existing?
No.
Yes,
I'm
for
saying-
any intensification of use, it should.
No,
For any
I'm saying for
intensification
any
use.
expansion.
Grandfather for what you already have.
Grandfather, what the footprint you have, your grandfather.
Not the footprint. I'm talking about your lot. Your lot is your lot's your property.
Right, but
So-
I'm saying that, but we're talking about what you can build on your property.
Right.
So I'm saying always what you have is grandfathered. You can't touch that. I'm talking about expansions to that footprint into buffers is where I'm saying, why should we?
You're saying if you buy a house, it's on a lot and it's part of the houses or the garages within a buffer,
It's non-conforming now.
then it's non-conforming, but that's okay because it existed at the
Yes.
time the ordinance
Yes.
changed. But if you want to add another bay onto your garage into the buffer zone,
I'm saying no.
then you're saying they'd have to come in.
But you're only saying no to a dozen houses in town.
Yeah.
Not all the ones that were approved by the plan.
But John, really, what he's really saying, we're not saying yes to a dozen houses, because now they don't have that ability. So we're talking about it, giving them the exemption that they don't have now.
So that bit that I brought forward with Connor's recommendations on lots that previously existed to try to clarify it, which you guys thought was still wordy, how would you write the regulations to be what you want it to be that would be black and white and clear so we don't keep
Well, I
running?
don't think we're of a one mind yet, so we can't write the
Right.
regulations.
That's where we're at.
I
That's
think
what,
Jamie and I are in different
Well,
places.
no, but if we go Ron's way and next year, someone proposes a 150-foot buffer, do you want that buffer to apply to every existing house in Barrington?
What do you mean?
If we do a zoning amendment for a bigger buffer, or someone does as a signature thing, and all of a sudden the buffer is 150.
So
The new buffer in Barrington is 150 feet. Do you want that to apply to every existing house in Barrington, that the new buffer is 150 feet and it applies to everybody in Barrington?
I think what we're doing now is, when your property is subdivided or a property of record, the regulations at that time apply.
Right.
So you don't change them as you go along. And
that's what this is doing though. That's what Jamie's point is exactly what happened. You had your house and you had a right to use it with a 35-foot setback. The zoning changed after the fact. Now that new zoning applies, that setback applies to these lots.
Yeah.
That's what the issue
Want it
is.
to apply.
So
Yeah.
if the zoning changes again to go 75 feet or 100-foot setback to those wetlands, that would retroactive back all the way on these same lots the same way.
Yeah.
That's the point he's trying to make. Is that what,
And you think that's appropriate?
I'm thinking where there's an existing house on the property.
Right, so every house in Barrington today, if tomorrow, say we decide to vote for a 150-foot buffer and it passes.
Yeah.
Every house in Barrington would now be subjected to a 150-foot buffer and couldn't expand garage, playground, whatever is non-allowed in the buffer.
That would apply to every single new construction.
every
No,
single
Let me
house.
finish. It would apply to every single new structure. I don't think it's burdensome to say it shouldn't apply to expansions of houses. You know what I mean?
So that would apply to every single house in Barrington.
Yes, for expansions, yeah.
No, it'd have to
Anything.
apply, whether you get an expansion or not, it applies, and then you go for the expansion, it
Well,
doesn't apply.
you're grandfathered, but so,
Grandfather, for what? They're not gonna make it tear
You're-
down.
this little.
if you're in
takes
this,
that
you're
grandfathering out.
now, your house is existing. Doesn't matter if it applies or not, it doesn't apply to you because your existing structure, you're already grandfathered in your,
But you're
so
saying,
it's only for an expansion of that property, an addition to the property.
But that's a
Then it would
taking. So
apply.
today I can have an expansion, but tomorrow I can't.
Right.
Why should I be able to do addition if we're protecting wetlands buffers? Why should I be able to expand into that buffer when a guy building a new house cannot?
Because.
He can if it was a lot approved
I agree
pre-2001.
with that. I'm not saying, we're not taking that away. Like,
Right,
for unimproved properties,
right. So
but you bought the property, you built the house under those guidelines.
Pretenses.
Yeah, right.
When'd you buy it? Now? I mean, when'd you,
Well, if you bought, like my house was built in 1998, so.
well,
You're
remember,
saying retroactive buffers apply to every house in Barrington.
I think for additions, expansions of properties, I think I question whether it's fair that somebody building new has to respect the wetlands, But if I have an existing property, I can do an addition to those same buffers.
Well, no,
You gotta-
your thing's off a little bit.
Yeah.
What happens is, what you're saying is because there's no house on the lot, if the house was not on the lot pre-2001, the buffers don't apply at all.
Yeah.
If the subdivision came in 2005, those buffers apply. Those buffers apply because when the planning board looked at those lots, they made sure those lots were buildable, including the buffers where the house had to go. And that's the reason why you show a buildable area in the 4K.
But
So these lots that were previous wouldn't meet that. All of a sudden, if you applied those buffers under those old lots would become non-buildable, even if they haven't built a house on them yet.
But we're only talking about improved lots, so we're not talking about unimproved lots. So I'm not applying it to unimproved lots. I'm only applying it to improved lots. So I'm only talking about
Makes
expansion or
even
addition.
worse. So if you're a resident of this town, you own a house, you're subjected to the whim of a future planning board and buffers that are not 1000% science-based. It's kind of it's as the wind blows political thing to some extent.
Well, the buffers are in the zoning ordinance, so it's the
Sure.
town that votes on, it. So
Right.
it's not the planning board. The planning board, no,
The planning
They
board
can-
got them
We
forward,
would
the town voted.
forward, is
Well,
what I'm
no,
saying.
they can
In a-
petition
In a
to do
historical, yeah, that's another.
Okay, so
In a
I'm just
historical
saying.
fashion, the planning board would bring it forward. If a future planning board decides that 150 foot is appropriate, the simple question is, do you think it should be retroactive to every house in Barrington? Or are you under the grandfathered clause of both house and lot, that those are your rights? And I think that's where I'm at. I think to say that you're gonna be susceptible to the fluctuation of future zoning on an existing house is kind of,
If the house was built if the lot was approved between 97 and 2001, the buffers don't apply to any of
Apply.
those.
They don't apply. I'm not suggesting that changes.
Even if their house was developed when it was approved by the planning board, because that 9.511 says it doesn't apply to those lots, only the setback does.
Owning property does not mean you have a promise that the rules won't change. The rules can change, and that should affect everyone, at least after a phase-in period.
You know, as a builder, you know, I'm probably pissed off that I haven't followed today's codes when I build something.
I'm not, because it's today's. I'm a rule follower, and I'm happy to follow
Well,
today's rules.
but
I'm not-
it's
you can't
cost
come and
me
say,
money,
I'm gonna change
it's
the
cost
rules.
me money to build my house, but that's the way it is. You have to accept that.
Right, but I can't, but if I go knock on your door, say, like, I built my
You can
mother,
anytime.
my mother's in-law apartment, as big as she wanted, because it was pre-rules, right? Now, retroactive ADU rules apply, and now I gotta go up there and put.
The lot was big enough. She could have a duplex on that lot because the lot of record was big enough. And that still applies. She doesn't have to do an ADU.
No, but I'm saying,
He's just using it.
someone has an ADU that's bigger than what's allowed today. You think with the new rules that we instituted of 700 square feet, every ADU that's existing, we should knock on the door and say, you gotta wall off everything beyond this, because now there's new rules, and the
Well,
new
these-
guy who wants to build one can't do it.
ADUs are allowed in existing properties, right? Existing buildings, so
But limited in size.
limited in size.
We've increased the rules
Yes,
with
we did.
ADUs. So everyone that was pre-existing, you think we should retroactively
Oh, I get you.
apply those rules to those already existing ADUs?
I'm only saying that lots that became houses that are came after 2001.
So,
They can't expand into buffers. They have to
Lots that were
respect,
created after.
they have to respect
2001.
just like they respect today's codes, they have to respect today's buffers as well, is what I'm saying.
I would just like to point out that we do not have to have a unanimous decision, because you may have one or two people who are just vehemently gonna disagree with you on this all the way.
And this could be one of the ones that maybe passes and maybe doesn't when they're because of the contention of it.
well, you know, I'm working on the subdivision.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
If this subdivision was planned back in 1990, there were 12 house lots. Are we potentially trying to say that I bought a house lot back in 1992 for someday building on it? And potentially you can make a decision where that lot is useless to me now?
No,
That's what we
That's
don't
what you're
want to do.
saying.
no, 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 I'm not saying that at all.
Currently, you
I'm not
can't-
saying you
I'm saying
can't,
that.
I'm saying you can't expand.
Steve's saying that, he wants.
Steve said, well,
Oh,
I'm not there.
I'm saying there's no promise, if someone owns a lot, there's no promise that it'll be buildable in the future with future zoning. We've not made that promise. Doesn't matter if they paid some taxes on it. Just because they own a property does not mean they are exempt from all the rules forever.
I disagree.
But they-
If you, as the planning board approved the.
Well, now we have three
building
positions.
pay
We have three
taxes
positions.
They
as
were
a
being
buildable
taxed as a
lot.
buildable lot, and the town created regulations that took those rights away from them. I believe that would be a taking.
I agree.
And the town of Barrington would lose in a quarter block.
Well,
Yep.
wait a minute. I'm working on the subdivision regulations. I'm almost done. I just got some information. I'm waiting on an answer from you on that, that law, state law I sent you. But one of the issues that we got to come through is this issue of when plans are expiring, what that time period is. But we've had a discussion about state law. Now, state law in two places. It's both under the building permit section as well as the section on planning board approval says, so as long as, if we approve something and they get the plans approved, they are exempt 5 years from any ordinance regulation changes. So the state law says you get a pass for 5 years. But then after that point, you don't. So one of the things to think about is, is there a clock that runs? This kind of permanently says if it's unimproved, and what you're saying is forever, even if it is improved, that they never have to comply. Steve is pointing out that, well, we shouldn't be making that promise. And I guess I'm listening to everybody. I'm kind of agreeing that, hey, the state says there's a 5-year clock.
I think that's more specific. I think you're using it very
Well,
general.
I'm just saying that I know, but I'm just saying there's, it shouldn't be forever.
The 5-year clock is like we got the 80,000 square foot lots. Let's say we decided to go to 5-acre lots, that you can't go back on them and say, oh,
Right.
you need 5 acres, you can't get a building
Right.
permit. That's what that 5-year exemption is all
Right.
about. So once the subdivision gets built out, it's still an approved lot of record and they can still get a building permit on them.
Yep.
You can't change it until it's built out. That's what that exemption is all
That's
about.
right. But
Now, but to expand on that, you can't change those lots, but you have to meet current setbacks. Right?
Well, wait a minute, but
So you're-
setbacks are one thing.
No, but that's
buffers
how
are
you
another.
control that. The setbacks you have to meet the current setbacks you have to meet, so you have a smaller house on that tiny lot. So, I mean, even though you can't change the lot size, there is some control there, right?
So if they can't meet the setback requirements, they go to the zoning board to ask for
Yeah, for
relief.
hardship, yeah.
So there's a mechanism in place.
You have to, every rule or regulation that's written, there has to be a mechanism in place to give relief, and it's required by state law, because there's no way you can write a rule or ordinance or a regulation that fits every possible scenario.
In my point, Jamie, is, these lots we're talking about are buildable lots. They got a building on them, they got a home on them. So you can't say you're not making a buildable lot, and you can replace what you have. It's in the regulation, you replace the existing footprint, no problem. So we're not talking about making it unbuildable. We're just saying that you can't expand.
I think if you put your rights in one hand one day, and then if that changes at any point, someone's taking.
Remember,
something away.
you're-
Whether they pour into
No,
the
no,
cup
no,
or they
but
drain out of it, they're
before you-
changing your
This,
rights.
this exemption does not apply to improved lots now. We're talking about extending this exemption to these improved lots. So we're not taking away, we're giving. So this is not a takeaway. This is a give.
Carol, do you have any insight on this based on your experience of zoning for
Yes,
years
please.
and years and what has been tested and tried before the courts?
Well, first of all, it's quite typical that when something like wetland ordinance comes into effect, that there is some kind of grandfathering provision for everything that existed at the time. Typically, at least commonly, what I see are exemptions for structures, lots with houses on them, and not necessarily for vacant lots, because that buffer or setback may or may not apply when it's time, when people are ready to build. So that's pretty common, that there would be that kind of escape clause, which sort of mirrors the law anyway. When any zoning ordinance is adopted, obviously, everything existing is grandfathered. But for wetland ordinances, and I'm guessing, I don't know if it was somewhat political to get it passed, because most of those that I have seen have that kind of escape clause for structures that existed prior to the adoption. Some towns go a little bit beyond that and say, for example, you can put an accessory structure in that buffer area. And some, also make a big distinction between a do not disturb buffer and then a setback for buildings and parking areas and that sort of thing. So this is not uncommon, actually. What is a little bit different is the discussion here about exempting lots that are unimproved as opposed to those that are already improved or developed. I don't recall that I have seen that anywhere else in any other towns I've worked with. It's not to say that it doesn't exist, but that's a new one for me.
I
to
think the reason it
encounter.
happened here in Barrington is half the town's wetlands. We got you can you hit a good putt, you're gonna hit wetlands in Barrington.
Mhm, mhm. I mean, I understand the rationale now, listening to all of you discuss it, but this is something I haven't really encountered before.
You didn't want to turn, we didn't want to turn an approved buildable lot into an unbuildable lot
Mhm.
simply by making the ordinance change
Right.
to add the buffers. That was the bottom line to this particular exemption.
Which would affect a lot of lots in Barrington, a lot of
Right.
lots.
Mhm.
Yeah, Barrington, it already is limited on buildable area. Between conservation and wetlands, over 60% of this town is unbuildable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
But now we've got an issue of, should the buffers apply to homes, improved lots that existed prior to the buffers being added into the ordinance?
I would change that to say, should they no longer apply to houses that have been, to lots that have been improved? Because that's what we're talking about, not applying them to those improved lots anymore.
So the way John's got it written here, or Jeff and John, is that buffers will not apply to a lot that legally existed before March 13th,
Right.
2001.
That was what the board decided to write last 2 meetings ago. It
So
wasn't what we brought forward. It's what the board wanted to change it to.
Right. So it
Minus me.
would now cover improved as well as unimproved lots. So the debate is, it sounds like we all agree that on lots that were approved, but unimproved, that were approved by the board, but unimproved physically, that before March 31st, 2001, we still want them to be exempt so that we don't render.
Maybe
that
not, maybe
lot
not Steve on that one, maybe not Steve on that one.
Okay, maybe not Steve, but, so the real question comes down to, whether we want to make the buffers apply to improved lots or not, as John interprets it. And I now that I understand, or which otherwise legally existed, applies to these small lots that were created out before there was a planning board. So the question is, whether we want to apply it to improved lots or not that existed on March 13, 2001.
Or no longer apply.
So I'm a yay for exemption for all before 2001. So if it's before, whether it's improved or unimproved, you're exempt from the buffer. And then moving forward, they
Well,
can be.
this change would do that.
Is there a
Right, that's all.
definition of what improved
And now I
means?
understand that I'm for that.
Yeah, I'm not for that.
It's part of the thing in their definition.
What's that?
I'm not.
No,
Pre-2001?
I am not for changing it. I'm improved lots. I don't think we should give the exemption to them.
So we all own houses in Barrington. So I guess, how would we feel if the buffers when we bought the house,
Or
our
not
houses,
applicable.
and it wasn't applicable, and now we want to go add a garage,
Very.
and we say, oops, I'm sorry, yeah, the buffers apply.
Whoa, that's not fair, Jeff.
That is
Right
fair.
now, no, right now,
Have a
the
definition.
buffers do apply to improve lots.
But under-
They do.
said-
So we're talking about taking that away and allowing something that's not allowed now.
Right. No, I understand that point.
So we're not taking away, we're adding.
Right,
So.
you're right.
They can't go-
I understand.
No.
Got a driveway and then a
If
shed.
my house
So an
was
unapproved
built and
lot
subdivided
have-
before
has a-
2001.
Didn't have a house on it.
Okay.
And that's how.
So it's not adding to mine, it's adding to the.
No,
one-
well, if your house was, no, right now, you have to meet the buffers.
No, I don't. I don't because my house wasn't on the lot. The old farmhouse at the top of the
Yeah,
hill, the big green
yeah.
house, that's the only guy that's got to
Yeah, but
adhere to
was
that
your
buffer.
house on the lot in
No.
2001?
No, it was, yes, it was built before 2001,
But it was
Okay.
approved by the planning board.
Right. so I'm exempt. The big green house on the hill, the old original farmhouse, he's the only one out of the 13 houses on Kate Road that has to meet the buffers.
Yeah, but he subdivided the property, so
That's what I'm saying.
he could have given, he could have given himself a lot more
1956.
land. And, he should, if he wanted to build a
But
garage, he
it's-
should have subdivided.
But that
Even if he kept an extra 10 acres, if the house is
is in the buffer.
20 feet from the wetland, then it's still in the buffer. It doesn't matter how much land he keeps.
Right.
I think the thing
You have a
that,
million acres there.
But the
This isn't the
flip
original owner.
side of that, though,
this would be now, if someone bought this house that, say the greenhouse you're talking about, that passes hands in 2003. This guy now, what is his regulation?
In expectations, right?
Right, so,
Well, the buffers would apply to his because it was a developed lot. Undeveloped lot says a lot without a primary structure in our definition. So a primary structure is a house. A garage, a shed, all of those are not considered primary structures. Those are considered accessory structures.
no, my
So if there
point
was a
though-
house on it, it applies, the buffer applies when it was subdivided. If it was subdivided and the house was put on 10 years later, it still doesn't apply because it wasn't an approved lot when it was subdivided.
all right, let me, I
my
think I can move this.
intent,
forward.
though.
Why don't we accept this language and put it forward as is, and then we can vote on it later on.
Alright.
It may not be unanimous. End of story.
I just-
Or it could be a split vote.
Yeah,
So,
it might be a
so
split,
the consensus is to bring it forward the way it's written.
and, I
And
won't,
we can maybe go home to.
I won't flip
Yeah.
the rest of it.
No, I guess
My
I
way.
want to extend it.
the argument is
I wanna
that
extend
we
it
all
tonight.
understand what we're.
Yeah.
No, my question is intent, right? So if I'm the guy who owns that big greenhouse, I'm gonna do the subdivision.
Well, a female, I took her.
I have an intent on what my future is in this home. But if I'm the guy who buys that house after it's already been subdivided, it's the old existing house, I have no input into what the intent was.
Well,
Say if I want
the
to
guy
build,
that originally did the subdivision didn't either because those buffers didn't apply to you when you did the subdivision. Those buffers came about afterwards.
right.
So-
Retroactive.
So you didn't anticipate it. You didn't plan for it when you did the subdivision. The rules changed on you, but it didn't change on the rest of the lots, just yours.
That's that's what's
Right.
so confusing to me.
That's, right.
Yeah.
That's what shouldn't happen.
Right.
But that is what happened by the way this regulation is written.
And but
No, I agree.
Who said move forward?
everybody's
I
got
said
to
move
move forward, right?
Everybody said,
Forward the way it's
Yes.
written.
everybody said move forward.
All right. Number 10. Oh, yes, another Ron Allard amendment.
Mine?
Yes, this is yours. So
That-
after,
Ron Allard's a really smart guy.
yeah, I know.
Maybe not.
So this had to do with, we talked about bed and
I'm
breakfast.
sorry, I'm not ready to move forward. I'm sorry, Jeff. I'm not ready to move forward. It sounds like there is not consensus on moving forward with this change. I think if, as long as that's the case, we should not propose the change at all.
Well,
I think-
that's fair,
I think if,
a majority. Well,
reading the room, I think the majority is in favor of moving forward, Steve.
And that's,
So I think you and I.
With this sex change, despite
Yes.
your
Yes, I think,
having a reservation.
if I read the board, I think most people are in favor.
it doesn't have to be unanimous.
Sure.
And we can have a vote if you'd prefer to.
Well, yeah, but it's not just me, right? So if there's that much concern about it, for various reasons, maybe we should just leave it as it is and not even put it before the voters right now.
No, before the vote.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. If that's one
Yeah.
opinion, and so
Yeah.
we'll do a vote, a real quick vote to move forward
We'll move forward as written.
as written.
Okay.
Andy, Ron, no.
To move this
no.
forward as written, yes.
Okay, Ron, yes. Andy,
Aye.
Doesn't say I'm gonna vote for it. but
Jeff?
I think we should move forward.
All right.
Jamie, move forward as written.
I think it's a good discussion. I think it should.
You're a no. So,
I'm done with that. Yes, so I got your point.
okay, so we'll
Okay.
move forward, but there'll still be plenty of discussion and, my biggest thing is making sure we understand what we're moving forward. And,
Yeah.
so like you said, to be able to explain it to somebody else, what we're doing, and that's the important part.
I'm not sure I'm even there yet still, but anyway, go ahead, Jeff, with number 10.
All right, so this is discussion, we tried to figure out, bed and breakfast. Well, we started out by Ron's concern over parking at bed and breakfast, and that led to more discussion. And then, well, why don't, where concern was, well, how do you define a bed and breakfast? Does it have 6 rooms? Does it have 60 rooms? After a lot of discussion, we came down to, well, wait a minute, if we already require a conditional use permit in the general residential, neighborhood residential, and HCO region, so why don't we just make them all conditional use permits, and then they come in and they tell us what they want to do, and then we decide whether the parking's appropriate, so on and so forth, whether it's appropriate for the neighborhood, or for that particular zone. So
It's clear and logical.
it's clear and logical and simple. So, and, obviously, the explanation purpose of this amendment allow more planning board oversight and a butter input into a use that can have varying impacts depending on the neighborhood and the intensity of the use. And that was the other thing is if you just had, if you didn't use the process of conditional use permit, then you weren't, they weren't necessarily, we weren't going to get a butter input.
In the essence of saving everyone, is there anyone that disagrees with this? Motion to move it forward?
Can I add one thing? Can I add 3 tables to that and see if anybody will let it fly? Drugstores, gasoline service stations, and convenience stores with gas pumps. If we make them all CP, it's the same reasoning, it's the same everything, more board oversight and a butter input.
I'm fine with it.
Which ones you add?
I'd like to do drugstore, gas service stations, and gas.
But those
convenience
are
stores with
already
gas-
going to have to come in for site review.
But they're,
He wanted to add conditional use to them.
Yeah,
Right.
but that's what the commercial zone and the village district town center was designed for.
is it?
Yeah. Okay, well, you asked the question, I disagree, so.
So
I'm not there either, James.
so I guess we find out what they want to do here, and then because you're gonna want to put them in all the zones, I guess that was what the issue is. Because right now, it's a conditional use for general residential, neighborhood residential, if I use drugstores, and also the highway commercial overlay, but it's a regular permitted use in the village, town center, or the regional.
Right,
commercial.
and then I want to make the CP for all those 3 as well.
Russ?
Yeah, I think it just gives us more oversight and it's another step, because honestly, I mean, you can map it out and see where a gas station fits in any of those 3 zones, and there's really nothing,
They're gonna put one on Kate Road, so.
Right, well, they're gonna put one at nights eventually, but, so we gotta,
Service.
Jamie, I think that needs more discussion. I don't think I'm there.
Why would,
but you, all right.
I'm kind of a pro-commercial industrial.
Why do you want to
tax-based
regulate,
kinda
why do you
guy.
want to regulate bed and breakfast so much then?
yeah,
Well, that was parking. Jeff blames this one on me, but I really don't think this was me.
It's in village town.
It was tangentially we got there, but I didn't start
But
this
listen
one.
to the logic here. Bed and breakfast is more strictly regulated in village, town center, and regional commercial, but not gas stations.
I think that was because the uncertainty, like I said, we didn't know whether it was 6 rooms or 60. Where are we going to end up with a Hilton or are we going to end up with something quaint little?
One that Andy showed us the picture of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
We-
lovely
3
18
pumps at
room.
30, I don't know.
Remember, it started with parking.
Like a 16.
We know what a gas
Yeah, it's
station is.
18,
We know what a
16 rooms or
drugstore
18
is.
rooms.
There's a CVS and a gas station in there too, right?
Right, but it's permitted at this
Right.
point,
Drugstore
Exactly.
as well.
which I think is
Or
detrimental to the town's
Weed shop.
character.
That's,
That's an opinion.
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's an opinion. I don't think that's I don't know, the board's place. The town has voted on this.
That's what I'm asking the
That's-
town to do again.
Okay.
Because there's so much uproar about the last gas station, I think this would pass without any thought whatsoever.
I love this new guy.
I actually agree with Jamie. It would, because I can tell you, I remember sitting through those meetings and as I'm sure probably John and Barbara do, they were long and painful.
We don't want to talk about it.
It started while I was on the planning board and it ended a couple of years after I was off the planning board. That's
And
not
it-
long now,
And let me ask you
Yeah.
a question. It was a permitted use, right?
And that had as
Right.
much to do
So it
with.
was a
local-
permitted use and we had all that discussion, so it didn't stop all the discussion. It didn't stop the delay. It didn't stop, the oversight. So I would say
And
it
that was,
sends a bad message.
that battle was rooted in local politics as much as it was
It was
anything to do with the use or.
My
end
point is,
result.
well, my point is this, nobody, other than the developer, no one really wanted a Burger King and another gas station. Yeah, maybe there's
I'm
50
happy.
people. I know you are. You'd love 6 more gas stations to choose
I like
from.
Burger King.
We're getting a huge tax revenue, minimum town impact.
Right.
That's,
None
I'm
of
just,
you
I'm
guys
just
go
putting it out
there,
there.
right?
It's a huge tax input,
You don't
very
go to
minimal
that
town
gas
impact.
station.
The only
I
thing,
actually don't.
the only thing.
I don't go
here,
there.
It's the only diesel in town.
the only,
John likes the coffee. He has
yeah,
to-
and that sounds great. The only thing I hear over and over again is that other than people that came from like a Plastow who want to bring it here, nobody wants Plastow in Barrington. But then you get people that move from Plastow to Barrington and they're like, let's bring some more. Let's have a Home Depot, six CVS's to choose from because one's not enough. And I think we gotta, the whole
What
point.
comes to me is just the opposite. People that have lived in town for a long time tend to be more considerate of change. And the people that moved to town said, I moved here like this and I don't want it to change. That's what comes in my office more.
So those Massachusetts guys moving up.
I don't want that. No way.
So the conditional use, I mean, you guys are gonna decide. It was,
Or
drugstores, gas station, gas service stations?
Yes,
Another one?
drugstore, gas service stations, and convenience stores with gas pumps.
Can we make that a separate one though? Can that be separate?
So I think, so
Because I'm in favor.
I guess, so just to try to move the meeting forward, because we're starting to get a little late.
Yeah.
If everybody on board with changing the one for the drugstore.
Drugstore, no.
Nope.
No.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
1,
I'm
2,
on board.
3, 4,
You're on
5,
All
5
right, so the
drugstores.
drugstore one will change.
I got 6. You got Steve.
Okay, the gasoline service station.
You want, you
Gas
Gasoline service
station.
station.
Wait, does it have diesel?
talk about making it a condition.
Already got one.
Conditional use.
permit.
It
Yeah, I
doesn't
know.
mean you can't do it. It just has to come before the.
Gasoline service station is gonna be a place like Knights.
Four to
Convenience store with gas pumps.
That's Steve.
5, 3 gas station.
Two, huh?
Okay, and then convenience stores with gas
I
pumps?
guess I'm not surprised, Steve.
Yeah, we got enough of that. already.
Okay, so all 3 of those will be changed to CP across the board on every single zone.
Please.
All right,
Thank you.
next.
And we all agreed.
No, can I make one? Could we make that a separate thing, number 12 though? Those.
So it's
ones?
voted
No,
on
just
separately.
regular.
Should we make them all separate?
I like,
Make them all
I like
separate.
10 where it is, the way it is. I want to vote against the other one.
Most likely.
Those would be separate, so it'd be,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Make
More
them all
separate
separate.
Yeah.
That way each
Yep.
person is
Yeah.
voting
and choose.
independently of them.
Yeah.
each unit, okay?
Yes.
Fair enough.
So
All
are
right.
you ready to pull your hair out here? or what?
Are there gonna be seats in the
Not
building?
quite.
This is gonna take.
All right.
Number 11.
You know what's going on and you're gonna be confused. Never mind someone that's walking in reading it for the first time.
11, I got it, I know I was part of this, but
Yes, you were.
10 to 40 just seems to me a big step.
I totally agree.
Andy, isn't this the one we talked about, 40?
It is.
Oh,
It was the end of the
I
meeting, we were soft.
It was like now, just like now, or, yeah, whatever.
I mean, Andy's reason.
So
I know, but
You're
10,
gonna have some.
10 to 40, come
You're
on.
gonna have
scratch
some-
this one, or do we want to make some change?
I think something more is okay, but I think 40 is just a step too.
We've split.
I think it's a step too far and I don't think it's going to accomplish what you want. So I'm not in favor of this at all.
Well, I mean, do you want another development like on Route 9? Just slammed in there, those things?
Do you want 80 more units crammed
I don't
in
have a
on?
problem.
I do not.
I
I'd
don't
love
either.
to see that, whatever we could do to dissuade that.
Yep.
And I think that, for me, at the time, was a maximum number of units. Instead of the 80, dropping it down to 30 is the maximum number of units on the lot. And then they have to break it up into 3 different parcels and
I mean, I agree with Jeff. I don't think it's going to drive mixed use, but I think it's a separate issue. I think the density of these development projects are not well supported by the town, so I'm happy to go up.
I think the problem you run into is they might not be they're not well supported by the town, but there is no recourse for the people of town other than changing the zoning on it, because what happens is a developer looks at that and they're looking at, how do I get the most bang for my buck? I'm gonna cram as many units as I can in there.
Well, I'm okay with increasing, it's not to 40.
Well,
I mean, there's, 25 is right in between.
I'm good with 25.
But if you've got, but if you got the lot size, they're still going to cram them in. You can change this number to whatever you want. If they can buy a big enough lot, they're still gonna cram it in.
Yeah, but I think 10,000 just gives you a little bit
They
left.
are, but what it means is they're gonna put a whole lot more into conservation to do it.
Right.
Well,
I guess
so-
I gotta understand
yeah,
the
you can do
science
But
of
you're gonna preserve. a whole
incremental
lot more
increase in
land.
the septic part of it.
Your question,
The septic would have to be met, whether it's multifamily or mixed use, so,
Yes,
um,
when it's cut into the hill, that's like a monster.
That one's actually smaller than
That's
the one that's
smaller.
gonna
Right,
go
but
in.
every unit
on
you
a
add,
private
how much
lot.
land do you need
No, the-
for
yeah,
facilities?
Dove, but it's
It's
also
kind of
smaller.
my thing.
You know, where there's that little
that's.
lot for sale comes down 9,
The
and there's the woods that go
Oh,
back
yeah,
into the
yeah,
clear spot.
yeah.
There's gonna be 80 units back there.
multifamily.
80 units.
yeah, so.
That's absurd.
Well, yeah, I mean, instead of changing this,
Right.
I would, what can we do to encourage
Mixed use.
mixed use? And then I'd be all for limiting, the size. I agree. I think 80 units,
Was too much.
but they met the regulation, so we can't deny them.
We're not denying them, we're
Approval.
fixing it
Right.
so that we don't get another one
Another
of those.
Yeah,
Right.
now, if we wanted to say, there'll be no more than
20.
20 units, 40 units, whatever it may be, so we don't end up with another 80, I'd be amenable to that.
The challenge that you're gonna run into here is if we're truly trying to be mindful of the town and our tax base, kind of as John alluded to, one commercial development ends up being a whole lot less impactful on the tax base than adding
Yep.
80 residential units that impact fire, police, school,
You already want a
transportation.
new fireman and a new policeman this year. You add
Yeah.
80 more units. Oh, we need another officer.
Right. Oh, they're already gonna, that's already coming anyway, but
But I'm just saying, that's the reason why it's happening.
yeah.
Well, the first one we did a project like this, I ran the numbers, and they're money losers. If you taking the projected number of kids, projected tax revenue, they cost the town money.
Yes.
So to me, 10,000 to me is way too low. I think it's a good way to control. I hear what Jeff's saying too, these big projects but I think if we increase the density, we increase the value, we reduce the number of impact of town services. I think, and I'm good with 25,000 square feet. I just had a big problem with 40.
Why?
I
I
think
guess
going
I'm
from
trying
10
to understand.
I mean-
I'm seeking to understand.
I think it's just too big of a step, I think.
Hey, you gotta go big or go home, right?
Well, I mean,
But-
40,000 is, that's like half of what a regular house lot is now. It just
Right,
seems like a lot.
I mean, if you use logic and extrapolate it, it's 40,000, right, for one, 80,000 for two. You just.
But you got 80,000 for your first unit by the regulations.
Right.
So that 80 unit building that's in there, that would, if you change it to these regulations that he's talking about, you're probably gonna end up with 25 units in there.
Which is,
Still gonna get 25 units, even changing it to the 40,000 for each one. Cause that was like a 20-acre piece, wasn't it? When you took all that open and the whole bit going.
yeah, something like that, right around there.
So 2 acres for the first unit, so that's 18, so you would have got 9 more, so you would end up with 10 units there instead of 80.
So when it says unit, how many dwellings are in a unit?
One. One dwelling. per unit.
So I guess, so how's it multifamily if it's 80,000 square feet for the first unit? That's just one unit. That's not.
Right, so let's say you got 20-acre lot. And we're gonna call 80,000 2 acres, even though it's a little less.
Yeah.
And we'll call the 10,000, we'll say there's 8 units that you get per acre. So if you lose 2 acres for that first one, so that's one dwelling unit. So then you take the other 18 acres, so you take the 18 times 8, that gives them another 100 units to go with it at the 10,000 per unit. So if you do it as the 40,000, like he says, you take that same 20 acre, you're gonna get 1 for that first 2 acres, and then for the other 18 acres, you're gonna get 2 per acre. So that gives you 10 units on that 20-acre piece. So you're gonna have 20 dwelling units on a 20-acre piece this way, instead of having 100.
Right.
So it's thinking smaller scale, if I just want to build a duplex,
Mhm.
I need at least, I
Need
need
120,000 square feet.
90,000 square feet currently.
Well,
80,000 for
in-
the first unit,
well,
10,000 for the second.
That's, you're talking a different.
No.
No, so this is only in this zone that you allowed this. The rest of the town, if you got a 1-bedroom unit, you need 40,000 for each additional 1-bedroom, and you need 80,000 if you're gonna do a 2-bedroom or more. So if you were gonna do a multifamily in any zone outside of this zone in town, if you got a 20-acre piece and those are gonna be 2 units or bigger, you can only put 10 units in there, max, that's it. You're done at 10, no matter what. This is the only zone where you get that high density. And this high density would still give you twice as much density as every other zone in town, even if you change it to 40.
So you're saying 40, so you're making the argument for 40.
Because you still get twice as much density as any place else.
Does this, my only,
No,
I was gonna say, and you're not, and like, if you talk about conservation, if we're actually concerned about environmental impact, you get a state-approved septic, but the loading that you're gonna concentrate into these areas is intense.
yeah. So my,
Especially if you got a high water table.
Right.
how does this affect small scale? If I got a small, if I just want to put, in this zone, a 3-unit building, not 80 units, how does that affect a 3-unit building?
So if you change this to a 3-unit building, you would need 3 acres of land, you could put 3-unit building in. Because you're, well, actually it'd be a little less, because I'm doing the 80 and the 40s. So we're calling 40,000 square feet an acre, even though it's 43,560. So if we call it that way, the first unit takes 2 acres, the other 2 units each take a half an acre. So changing it to the 40,000, you, on a 3-acre lot, you can still put 3 units in that zone.
And that's what as far as housing availability, if someone has a small lot and they want to build a 3-unit, I think that fits more into the character of the town as opposed to a 90-unit or 80-unit, but allowing the ability to still do a duplex or a 3-unit.
So if you take that same 3-acre lot, the way this is written, you would get, for the 2 acres, you get 1, and then you would get 16 for the other 2 acres. That same 3-acre lot, you would be getting 17 units in there with the current regulations instead of 3 on that same 3-acre
On a
lot.
3-acre lot, you can get 17 units
By
currently.
the way the regulations are written now, yes.
Yeah.
I'm good with the 40,000.
I mean, that was what
I'm with
we showed you the numbers and how they worked out.
I just needed it
Start
laid out.
over though, Jeff. You gotta boost me up.
Well, if we bumped it up to 20,000, but I think we ought to also set a limit on the number of units.
Yeah, I agree. This one's a little big to chew in 5 minutes, but,
Well, to set that number on units, someone comes in with a 100-acre piece and he can have the same number of units as someone on 5 acres. You really got to do it by density of the lot. You really couldn't say no more than 5 units per lot.
No, but you could say the total development can be limited to 40.
Then the guy will come in and do a subdivision and create 5. I
Right.
mean,
that's what I
a bunch
want.
of 5-acre lots and they still puts 40 on each one.
Right, but
But what happens is then you're not getting your open space. You're causing this,
Right.
open them all up where you would have had them all condensed together and you get a large piece of open space. So which way is the town better off in the long run?
I think, Jeff, but I think the square footage, this thing is the cleaner way to go about it, I
The
think.
square footage is the right way to go.
The clean.
I think character-wise, 5 smaller things with less open space is character for the town is the better way for the town to grow, as opposed to these clusters of trouble and then a big bunch of green space that only hoodlums and,
But if you look at how, if you look at how they set them up,
well, they're the good part. They run the.
if you look at how they set them up, they got a 5-lot building, another 5-lot building, another 5-lot. You're gonna get the same thing. It's just they're gonna be a little farther apart. They're still gonna be the same thing. They're gonna still look the same way.
Will they?
Well, the 80,000 would apply 5 times though. It wouldn't be exactly the same. The first one,
Because it would apply 5.
yeah, the first one, so it wouldn't be exactly the same. But I think you're right. If you got 100 acres, I shouldn't be penalized because I got a bigger lot than somebody else. I think that the number, whether it's 20, 25 or 40, I think is a cleaner way to go about it. And it's already written that way,
Do we
so.
want to take a stab at moving this 40 forward then?
Well,
See where-
who wants 40?
I'm feeling it's pretty comfortable.
Where are you?
Steve,
He's up.
buddy, where are
It
you?
looks like,
I think the number's a little bit big.
I can live with 40. I can live with
And we can parse it out at some public hearing, right?
Yeah,
Forward if we get.
you remember, the other side of the argument is affordable housing, workforce housing, all that.
Oh, don't say that. We don't want that.
there's a whole math formula.
Excuse me?
That is an
Housing?
And it's
We don't
based
want
on.
that.
No. How are they gonna work it down?
Affordable housing, affordable housing, affordable housing.
Okay.
I actually got a mobile home park that's way over density that would be allowed today that would like to expand into the zoning board and asking for relief. And another mobile home park.
That's our affordable housing, mobile homes.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
That's the town character we want.
Remember, affordable housing drives down your house price.
So what's happening? Are we going with the 40?
Yes, Steve. All right, just to let people know, I'm almost done with the subdivision regulation draft changes. John and I are having a discussion about one legal aspect, but, so probably by the next meeting, I can have the draft changes put together to distribute for the following meeting. We can sit down and have a discussion on them. But when we do, everybody needs to bring their, the latest edition here behind.
Yeah, my wife went and cleaned up for me and now I can't find my lovely white zoning.
Does
book.
that,
We got extras in
We
the
got
office if you need.
extras.
does that include the paving one that?
I've got
Oh,
a,
not to blow a big hole in this, but because of January and the holidays, this building's not gonna be available on the 21st. So that would be a third meeting of the month. Now,
Third.
you don't want to do the fourth meeting, the fourth week of the month, because that's between Christmas and New Year's. I'm assuming nobody wants to come in for a meeting that week. So
Not it.
as far as the public hearing goes, we got our regular stuff the first week and we got what, 4 cases?
Okay, we got 4 new cases and possibly 2 atactical in Meadowbrook.
So the thing is to try to squeeze the zoning thing in along with them might make a meeting that would be over the top. So we might want to consider maybe doing the 14th. So you would hold the first meeting of the month for your regular meeting. Use the 14th as the stuff for try to bring your zoning forward. And then the last 2 weeks of December, you'd be off, which I think would work everybody's schedule and stuff better. But that's something that you guys would have to decide because we need to know that we can post the hearings correctly to move stuff forward.
so this facility is not available.
Not available on the 21st. We just found out about it yesterday.
So the proposed, 7th to the 14th. Andy, I heard you out. Will you be
The
around?
7th, you would still.
He's gone the whole month.
I'll be coming to you from Florida.
You don't have to be on the 14th. You can do your public hearing any day. You just gotta set it.
I'll be doing like Steve. I'll be on the air from Florida.
We have to have a quorum here or else it's not a meeting.
Right,
Right.
What's a quorum?
so.
How many?
You need 4 members here.
So usually that just hands it on,
And
Andy
just so
now.
everyone
Chris
knows
did
too. that
last
the
week-
16th
I will
last
be
week-
14. I can't promise you that I would be here the
Yeah.
27th.
Right, but
21st.
2 days later is my birthday.
So do the
so
7th and the
everyone knows.
14th?
Gone?
Thanks.
Oh, no, I'll be.
Does that work
here.
for you,
My
Steve? The
birthday
7th and the
party.
14th?
7th and 14th, sure.
So,
Go with the 7th for the regular
Well-
public hearing and the 14th to do your zoning.
Now.
Because we got to post it as a hearing to you guys to do your official presentation, that butters know, or that people in town know that they can come in and listen to this, give their input, and you guys would vote on those proposed changes,
Yeah, that would be the 14th.
the 14th.
Do we think we're ready the 14th or do we need to?
If the other option would be to kick it into,
You're into January.
then you kick it into
and then
January. Do you
don't
want to
have
kick
much
it that far
time.
down the road?
Yeah, I know. We did that once before.
Yeah, and we ran into a snowstorm one year.
Right, we had to do
Yeah.
2 meetings in January and that turned into.
That was the reason why I brought it up tonight.
I say we do it. Oops.
Works for me.
Well,
have
we
to have
could
an extra meeting
distribute,
in January.
then we,
We were hoping the 7th wouldn't be too busy and you could squeeze it in, but it didn't happen.
okay. Well, yeah, so we could, so we could distribute the changes on the first meeting so that we're ready for the.
Laptop bag.
We can bring stuff forward for you guys to review on the 7th
Yeah, you
without
can leave
holding a
is
public
that
hearing.
anything
It would
you
be
keep?
something
No,
that you guys
leave
could
it
just
in
have
and
a
I'll
consensus.
Oh, we can do what we did today.
Might have a consensus type thing and then still
Right.
post it for the 14th.
Yep.
Because as long as we, oh, no, we wouldn't make.
10 days, right?
Yeah, because we have to put it out for notice because of it. So we wouldn't make the posting. We could make no, because you got to post forward what you're bringing forward.
Right.
So we couldn't make any changes on the 7th.
If you made any changes on the 7th, then you got to hold another hearing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do the 7th, but I don't think it's fair to all the applicants to go through all this. You had a lot of people.
Or for you to go through your
The
hearing
applicants.
things and then stay here till like 1 o'clock in the morning to get to your zoning out.
Right.
I've done that. That's no fun.
I know it's not.
Well, we aren't voting on this, right? And
Or you'd be voting on it for, if you bring it forward as a public hearing.
on the 14th.
Yeah, if you bring it forward for a public hearing to have on the zoning, you would be voting on
Well, No, not necessarily. If we hold the public hearing, they'll say, yeah, okay, we got to make changes based on the public hearing.
Then you have to have a
Well,
second.
then you would have to
hearing.
hold a second one. But if you don't make any changes, you'd be done.
Well, I'm just thinking, I mean, it's, right now it's the 16th, so we've actually got 1, 2, 3 weeks before the 7th meeting. Is there any way to make those changes and then distribute those to the board? We can get back any comments that we have so that we can just look at them on this.
Well, you have to have a in-person meeting for comment. You can't, the other thing is you guys could have a short meeting.
Well, if we make comments to you.
Yeah.
Are you thinking on the third?
Yeah, you really want to hold it as a public hearing. You want to make this clean. You don't want to make it look like something's done under the
Yeah.
covers without, the public notified that there's going to be a meeting out. There's nothing worse than bringing forward a zoning amendment with someone in the background saying, yeah, they did this under the guise, they didn't post it as a public hearing. It was,
Sir.
you don't want that. You want to keep
I
everything as
mean, if
clean
you
and
want to
open as
meet
possible.
before the 7th, just to go over Jeff and I.
So
I'm
what's the
nervous
last-
about-
what's the last Tuesday of the month. What day?
30th.
The 30th.
30th. I'm just worried that you're gonna.
When's Thanksgiving? That's-
Thanksgiving is the 25th.
Yeah, the Thursday before.
25th.
Thanksgiving's the 25th, 26th is Black Friday, and we have Monday, Tuesday, the 30th, and the 1st is on Wednesday.
So the other option is you would hold your meeting in January, and then you would have to hold this, if you made any changes, you have to have a second meeting in January, along with doing your regular January hearing.
Yeah, but they already agreed to the 14th, right? No?
They're still discussing it,
Oh,
No,
because they want to know about getting any.
No, what, we already,
we're
no, we
okay with
agree to
it.
the
Yeah, we all agree
14th.
to the 14th.
We're just trying to make sure we get another, before this thing gets posted, which is what, 10 days? Then,
So you want to hold another
but
meeting
it's
before
really
that?
12 because you can't count the.
Right.
days.
So should we meet on the 30th?
well, do we want to have a short meeting just to go over things?
Well, if we've
I
got
mean, we all agreed to the things that are here now and you look at what we've done.
I still got to reach out to Jim Connick and find out where he's at if you want to change that thing on that zone.
Yeah.
hold on, if we have to post, if we have to be posted 10 days before the
Yep.
public hearing, 10 business days,
Right.
that means, or did you say 10 or 12?
It's actually 12.
12
'cause you
total
can't
days. If
count.
you don't count business days, you do 12 total days.
Okay, so one.
For the 14th, you get a post on the 2nd.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You would have to be posted really by the 24th because
So you would have to hold a meeting before that.
we'd have to have the meeting on the 23rd.
Why?
Because if you're gonna make all your changes and then post here on the 23rd, it's 1 week, 2 weeks, that's 14
No,
days.
we're
We're not posting for the 7th, you're
we're
posting
not
for
posting
the
for the
14th.
14th.
Oh, okay, sorry, I was posting on the
7th is all business.
Why are you trying
My
to Thanksgiving? Why are you doing that?
So do we want to meet on the 30th?
Clean that as
Discuss
posted
this.
as that, because you don't want
And
something.
then, yes, and then you would
Yeah.
post on the 1st.
Right,
It's just-
Right.
for the 14th.
Right, you would have as late as the 2nd to clean it up.
So can we meet here on the 30th?
Yeah, meet here on the 30th?
We gotta make sure we get into the school that day, but I'll,
I know the 21st, they said it was not available.
Right.
We don't
That's
know about the
December.
30th.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
December, we're
We're
talking.
talking about
November.
2 weeks from today, do a meeting.
Okay, and in the meantime, I'll try to reach out to Jim Connick and stuff and see if there's anybody else that owns some of them other lots around there that was different than him.
One in the morning.
So,
I'll check with the school to see if we can meet same time, 6:30 or.
so we would have meetings November 30th, December 7th, December 14th.
Yep.
Does that interfere with your vacation, Ian?
We're trying to force him into it before the vacation.
Does the 30th I mean, does the meeting have to be in a public building?
Drive it down because we're taking.
It's gotta be in a place where the public is allowed to come and participate.
Plus,
And if we're doing this stuff virtually,
Virtual.
we need this stuff all set up in order to do it. Technically, does it have to be held here in a public building? No.
No,
So if you wanted to do the 21st in a different location, we would have to get all this equipment there. It would have to be posted. And anybody in the public that wanted to come would have to be allowed in.
So, go the rest of the way to Troy's.
14th is good.
People might.
14th is good.
So we're gonna try.
All right, so
The 30th is only to review, right?
the 30th is just to review changes real quickly, see if there's anything, so you can post.
Okay, we can get it to everyone in that.
yep,
5 minutes.
Right, if we can read it
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Well, we had 90% agreement on what was written, so we In theory, this should be a quick meeting.
Yes.
That's rather.
I thought tonight was.
Tonight should have been a quick meeting in theory.
This is quick.
Right, that's
It's only
why I'm
9:30.
concerned about.
Then-
not
no,
Ron, it would have been a
That's
quick.
All right, let's move on then.
That's why I'm worried. about
Reports or unfinished
not meeting
business?
Wasn't you,
and
just
just
talking
posting
about
it,
Anything
and
else?
then getting into the meeting.
All
Make
right,
a motion
My
to
own for the
adjourn
town.
until the
Second.
30th.
to the 30th.
Andy
Second.
Knapp, seconded by Jeff Brand, Andy M,
BMI.
Ron Allard,
Yes.
Andy Knapp,
Aye.
Jeff Brand,
Fran, I.
James Jennison, aye. Lee Hackett, Steve
I can
Diamond.
go have dinner.
Time to die. Take care.
All right, thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone.
What happened tonight?
Stop recording.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, no.